I am making beef stew and some basmati rice pilaf with a little mix of spices, including cardamom, which is kind of unusual.
I like it.
I'm making a beef stew. So I start with cubed up chuck. Season it on both sides with a lot of salt and pepper. I brown half of it in a Dutch oven, which is where I intend to build the stew, and the other half in a saute pan. That way it's not overcrowded and the meat really browns. I peel and cook parsnips in a little bit of water and butter with bay leaves and a pinch of brown sugar. Separately, I also cook spring carrots in olive oil with a little bit of butter, a little bit of water. After I brown the meat, I sliced up 2 onions. And I put those onions on top of the meat and I just let them steam and cook with the meat. I deglaze each pan with half a bottle of red wine and I cook that down until there's very little liquid left. I put 3 cups of beef stock hot into each pan. Eventually, I marry the 2 pans together and I just let it simmer gently on the stove. This is for the pilaf that goes with it. So there's gonna be a lot of spices in the rice. Okay, I've got my...
Whoa, where'd the meat go?
The meat is cooking in here.
Okay, so you worked it in the Dutch oven, you worked it on the saute pan. They both got red wine?
Yes, and a dollop of mustard, which thickens as it cooks. And here I've got my parsnips. I just peeled them. These are gonna go with the stew, but I'm treating them separately first to give them their own flavor. Then I'm gonna mix it all together and I'm gonna get on the pilaf.
Give me some pilaf explanation.
Cool. Here's the rice, the basmati rice. I'm soaking it. I always soak basmati rice.
You're soaking it, Marge.
And you see how much starch you get in the water?
It's already coming off.
Yeah, so you soak it in the amount of water you're gonna cook it in, which is like 1.5 times the rice.
Okay.
And then we're gonna cook it with this water. So the starch that comes out goes back into it as it cooks. I do this soaking the rice and removing it and then putting the liquid back in because the taste is divine. I dice up an onion and I slow cook it in butter with a little bit of water. I just get the onion soft and tender. I add 3 cardamom pods, just all the little seeds inside, half a teaspoon of cayenne, 2 teaspoons of cumin seed, 1 teaspoon of fennel seed, a cinnamon stick, and 2 bay leaves. And then I just pour the liquid and the rice over those toasted spices. I bring it to a simmer on the stove for about 5 minutes. And then I just cover it, heat off, and let it steam for another 10 minutes. Flake it gently with a fork. It's just hard to stop eating it. It's just addictive. This is the beef stew. Parsnips, carrots, a little bit of peas, mustard.
I love the mustard into the meat.
Cool.
Can I
And there's a lot of red wine and red wine vinegar in there, too.
The peas are my favorite. Alex did a beautiful beef stew. Delicious English peas in there, and a little bit of mustard to work as a thickening agent, but also really added some fantastic flavor. Give me the rice pilaf education.
Ooh, that's good.
Cayenne, cardamom, cumin, bay leaves, cinnamon, all cooked together.
Delicious, spicy too.
I'm going to rock out my celery, carrots, onion for the flavor base of my chicken soup. I'm ready with my thyme bundle. You know why? Because we don't have time for thyme. These little leaves will add their thymy goodness without having to add the little stickage action in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this in. Look at my vegetables, my flavor bases, onions, carrots, celery, and garlic with a little salt and crushed red pepper are doing their sweaty goodness. So they've done their sweaty, lovely workout thing, given out their lovely aromas, and they've softened a lot, and now they're ready for chicken. I have chicken thighs and legs here. I'm a dark meat kind of girl. Go ahead and get all that in there. Now, we've got chicken in there. Give this a little sprinky-dink of salt, but what are we missing in our soup? The soupy part. So let's add some water. So I'm a water kind of girl here, and we're really developing beautiful, lovely flavors. So we're gonna put this back on the burner, BTB, bring to boil, and reduce to simmer for about 30 minutes or so before we move on to our super secret flavor weapons of our soup. That's gonna make it our special chicken soup. I've got my aromatics, my bay leaves. We're gonna add 2 of those babies. All right, there we go. All right, now we're gonna put that on high, and as I said, BTB, bring to boil, reduce to simmer. I BTB'd, brought to boil, RTS, reduced to simmer, and now I'm STSing, skimming the scum. So now it's time for my super secret flavor weapons. So I'm gonna add some lemon and a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg. I know, not normally what you'd see in a chicken soup. Lemon juice, lemons right in the pot. It will give us a lemony chicken freshness. A little bit of cinnamon, so lemony freshness and a little bit of warm goodness here, warm cinnamony. And, you know, I'm not a super fan of nutmeg, but a couple grates of that is just a really lovely, super secret thing. So a little bit of nutmeg, a little bit of salt. Yeah. Now it's gonna taste even more better. Now, I have my pasta water going, so I'm gonna grab my noodles. We're gonna salt this a lot, I know. I've got a pound of little shells here. You know, you can use any shape that you want, and I'm gonna throw some beans in there. I like something starchy in my soup to help, like, you know, stick everything together. So I have chicken legs and thighs. I like the dark meat. It's a little richer, a little more flavor, definitely more fat. All good stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and give my hands a rinse. All right, let's get my lemons, my aromatics, bay leaves and stuff taken out of here. All right, so let's get our chicken back in there. My white beans, pasta, let's drain this. And I'm keeping it on the side and just putting it in the bottom of my bowl and ladling hot soup over it later on. So this prevents my noodles, whatever shape I want to use, from overcooking. Perfectly tender and delicious and still nice and toothsome and not big and swollen. All right, I'm grabbing a little cilantro, my last super secret flavor weapon. First of all, it's beautifully green, bright and fresh, and you know, I love to finish soup like that. Let's go ahead, put a little pasta in the bottom of our soup. That cinnamon and lemon and everything, they smell so good and really add just a beautiful flavor profile to this soup. That cilantro hits the soup and I can smell it. Got my spoon, but you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and do a dunk. That crunchy salt, I love it, and really olive oily.
My ultimate steak chili. Starting with the steak, as you see in this large, enameled cast iron Dutch oven.
What kind of steak, Jeff?
This is the humble chuck roast.
Yes.
Cut up, you can trim some of the fat out. They're super affordable, but so beefy. And it's just so great for long, slow, low cooking, and that's what's really essential about a true chili. So this is kind of like upgrading the ground beef, and we're gonna brown this steak, right? So we cubed it up about 4 pounds of chuck. We put in a searing hot with just a little bit of oil. We don't really season it too much. We've got some salt and pepper, but we don't have our spices. You want like at least one side that's like ready, that Maillard effect.
How's that taste? I wonder.
You want to try? You really want to try it? Yeah. It's a beauty. Like, you know, chuck roast, you know, chuck rolled, all this chuck cut of steak. It's great for grinding, for burgers and everything. But for this application, right, we're going to low and slow it because it is a tougher cut.
Can I do
Katie,
anything?
small dice on that onion, please.
Of course you give me the onion to do.
Of
My
course,
eyes
no
are
fun.
always
And then
watering.
eventually maybe quarter those limes, and that's going to be for our little accoutrement platter later for the toppings.
Jeff, a controversial chili without beans. Which is it?
Well, I'm going to tell you guys. Do you see any beans in front of me?
I know, I'm just saying.
Zero beans in this.
Yeah, we will invite you to Texas at any time.
Yes, it's
I know.
Come on down to Texas.
I've made the
baby.
mistake before of putting beans in chili on this show in front of Sonny, not only, but in front of maybe 50% of America was not happy with that decision.
I'm in the game of making people happy with food. So
Yep.
I will make my own chili recipe and I will share that with no beans. But then I will also develop a recipe with beans in it for anyone that wants it. And that's what this is all
And
about.
how hard is
I'll
it
take
to,
it either way.
to adapt to your needs?
Yeah,
with
just throw
beans?
the
Just
can
throw a
in
can of
there. Yeah,
beans
just
in
throw
there.
it
I
in
mean, this
there.
is not like magic.
Yeah.
These aren't magic beans.
Can I report that your chuck is perfectly cooked? That's the beauty of chuck. It's usually what we're making our burgers out of.
Yeah.
You just need salt and pepper to make it
Yep.
sing because it's so beefy tasting.
And you can see all this beautiful rendered fat in there, right? We just jump-started it with maybe a teaspoon of oil. People put too much oil
I agree.
in a hot pan when they're searing beef to get that color, to get that first kind of level of flavor on it. It is not necessary, especially with a fatty cut like chuck.
Well,
right?
what you
I
want.
learned a new skimming trick.
A
where you-
skimming trick.
Yeah, where you put the ice in the like cheesecloth or
Yeah,
the paper
yeah,
towel,
yeah.
and you're running around
yeah.
the top, and it picks up the fat, and then you
picks
just
up all the
toss
fat.
it.
Oh, that's gonna be great for later when we're bubbling and simmering,
Yeah.
and then you're about to serve, and you get that kind of extra layer of.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need some fat in there, but not
You
too
do.
much fat. All right, I have a jalapeno, some garlic on deck here.
Ooh.
But now we're gonna take all these dry spices and let them bloom in all this beautiful fat. All right, a Mexican oregano. Love it. Get it from the Mexican grocery store. It's super affordable and so much more floral. A little bit of paprika,
Smoked or not?
Do it.
unsmoked.
Okay.
Why do you ask? Because
Why do I
we're
ask?
using some ancho chili
Oh,
powder.
okay, there you go.
Oh.
Ooh. That's
Now
a
you
good
can
douse.
smell, and some cumin, and I got my wooden spoon, and this is the magical moment, essential for any chili. The blooming of the spices in the fat. Do not do this with the onions in there. Just give
Yeah.
it's
good.
a little alone time with the fat.
Yeah,
And you
because
can
there's natural
immediately-
oils in all those dried herbs and spices. They need to wake up.
I mean, this is just like,
It's smelling good in here.
It sure does.
It's
It
like
does.
you got the fire going, TV's on, and this chili simmering. What a perfect
You need
snowy
some red
day.
wine or beer, Jeff.
oh,
Jeff,
don't
come
worry.
on.
We're gonna kind of, to drink?
Yeah, well,
Oh, 2 jalapenos seeded, stemmed, the ribs taken out. Just for that, a little extra boost of heat, of course, but that beautiful flavor, and that's why we took out the seeds. So the
I
flavor
can
remains.
smell the
It
heat.
smells
coming
that
off of
cumin
that.
smells
Yeah.
so good right,
Right?
now.
And that ancho chili
Yeah,
powder
but
gives it
as soon
smoky,
as you put
earthiness.
those peppers in, I could smell the heat.
And now we're just gonna kind of let this chill, get it all translucent. We're right before we got all our ingredients. We're gonna add our garlic because it's the most sensitive.
It is.
Okay. So our onions are in there. They're gonna become translucent. We just put our garlic in. Make sure we have all our ingredients on deck to kind of stop the cooking in there. I know you smell the spice in the air.
Yeah.
And now you can see in here, right, how much we've developed those spices in there. The onions are translucent. All the flavor of the jalapeno is embedded with the spices.
Embedded.
And we've been scraping the fond off the bottom of the pan the whole time. Sometimes you need to add a little splash of water to kind of help,
That's
you know,
such a great
release it.
tip.
Yeah.
And
It's
if you think it's starting to burn, just that
Yeah.
little
Yes.
splash of water makes all the difference in the world.
I actually use a
Or
little
beer.
stout.
A little stout,
Yeah.
a little beer would be
Yeah.
great if you're, you know,
One in,
partaking.
one out.
But, you know, you just don't want to skip this step. You do not want to rush this step at all. You
Right.
want to develop all that flavor. We have our liquids handy. Okay, so I know you were talking about in the break about where's the tomato sauce with a paste. I have used just a little bit of crushed tomatoes.
That's fresh, right?
Fresh crushed tomatoes and kind of work that in and let that
Wait,
simmer and
fresh
develop.
or canned?
Canned.
Canned.
Okay.
Right, but not tomato paste, if that's
Right.
what you're asking. And this just kind of sweetens it all up. But then for our final liquid,
Ooh.
keeping nice and warm
What's
here.
this?
Just a little beef
Oh,
stock.
beef
Oh, okay.
stock.
Oh, there you go. Or
Bring it.
is that bone
Okay,
broth,
so
Jeff?
why do you heat it up
Fortify the
before you put it
flavors.
in there?
Why do I heat it up before I put it in there? Superb question, Katie.
Uh-huh.
You want it ready to go. You don't want to wait for all this to come up to a simmer.
Yeah.
So if this is simmering warm, you're eating quicker.
Like risotto.
Hungry. We
This needs
hungry.
2 hours
We've
to
been
cook.
skiing. You know what I mean? We
Right?
hungry.
We're hungry, man.
Yeah.
You got people, right? They
Isn't that just another pan to wash, Jeff?
right?
He's skiing. Are you kidding me? They've rented a chalet. They've got a
we've-
servant.
Like we were not
maid.
washing dishes. We-
No, we do. We do have some pictures of us. You did mention. I hold my
Let's
team.
see.
This
Oh.
remember that, Jeffrey?
Yeah.
That's when we went
Dog sledding with this real dog sledding.
And that's Jeffrey and
Taco
I
night.
literally après ski. I got
Look
my
at
fun
you.
sweater. Jeffrey's obviously head to toe in
That-
cashmere.
Yes,
Easy.
obvious.
Totally
Help
normal.
this guy out with the clothes.
I'm
Let's-
sorry.
I tell
can't
you, I
help
do
myself.
love thinking about you guys on vacation
It's
together.
adorable.
It
Yeah.
really, we did have so much fun. I mean, I ski
nonstop.
at least once a year, every couple years, but that was the first time skiing with
Yeah.
the Zakarian.
We're doing that again.
I know we're trying to plan it,
Yeah, another
coordinate
one.
schedules. All right, now it's time to add that chuck that we seared right back in there. Look at all those accumulated
Oh.
juices.
Oh,
That needs
Jeff.
to go in there. Boom, right?
Yeah.
Slide.
Get it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Don't want to
No.
ruin the gear, the fit, as the kids say. Now we have all
The drip.
this lovely. It's already starting to simmer. We're gonna cover it. We're gonna simmer it. Sometimes you got to take the cover off. You know, just see how much liquid you want in there, right? If you simmer without the lid on, you're gonna lose a lot of that water. It's gonna become thicker. You might have to add more stock. But if you want to kind of expedite the process, you can keep the lid on. 2 hours this needs.
At
Okay?
least.
At least. To just make sure that beef
Expedite
is
the process by
braised.
keeping the lid on.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Just remember that. If you're like barely a simmer and you put the lid on, it's gonna double that. I mean, it's gonna start aggressively simmering. So you wanna make sure you keep an eye on the lid. Katie, really quick, I'm sorry,
Yes.
I should have had you do this
Oh,
earlier.
I was so into
Slice up that
watching.
avocado for my toppings bar.
All right, you
can
got it.
crush up some of those chips, leave some of the chips whole for a little Dunkenstein later. But boom, 2 hours. How you doing?
Oh.
How you been? How's the family?
How you
Very
doing,
good.
Jeff?
Oh, look at that. Now we can.
Okay, you got to double that recipe.
Oh, now that is.
Yeah, I got to freeze that.
That looks crazy.
Simmered 2 hours. All right, lower the heat. We don't need to serve literally bubbling chili to our peoples. But we have a nice little kind of assortment of some of my favorite toppings, which just kind of adds texture, acidity, crunch, everything to the party, creaminess. Just right before serving, you can serve some of these, obviously, limes with them. But I like to give a couple just fresh little squeezes of last-minute lime here to kind of bump up the acidity and then round it out. This is a very rich dish, and we can do the defatting too if you so choose. We got the fresh lime for a little extra. We got the cream element from the sour cream. How's it going? Some crispy French fried onions for a little onion element. Some of these crunchy corns right out of the bin, real salty and fun. Some fresh cilantro, the crushed chips that Katie did wonderfully. I didn't know if you
That
could
was
complete
really
the task.
difficult.
We got the avocado, a little extra creaminess. And some little cornbread muffins. Come on. So you tell me what you want, Sonny, and I'm here for you.
Todo, por favor, mi amigo.
I love when you
Ahora,
do the cornbread and
aquí.
it gets, that's like your thickening agent for your chili.
Like, there is no shortage of
Can I
beef.
just note again?
Look at this.
I learned so much from you, Katie, because you were tasked to make garnish for all of us. And this is the amount that you put on the plate. This to me is garnish for one bowl of chili.
I was Russian.
Okay.
You know what'd be good on
But
this, Jeff?
I say to myself, okay, I can take it down a notch.
You got any pickled jalapenos?
You like
Oh, that
little
would be
onions
great
on
too.
yours?
I
Thank
think-
you.
Or pickled onions would be great.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
all right.
Word
Look
my
at
face.
this.
Can we get anything
Look
else in
at
that
this.
bowl?
Yeah. Get it all in, dude. You got chips on it too?
This smells so good,
Yeah.
you guys.
I'm in.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
Spoon me.
Wow.
why even ski?
Yeah.
I know why. Because you get a bowl of chili at the end of the day like that, a nice cold Weiss beer maybe,
Beautiful.
a lager.
Your wife doesn't ski,
Bison?
right? Your wife doesn't ski.
No, Sarah does not ski.
Yeah.
I don't
I
ski,
couldn't get her to ski.
No, she had blast. She
She
shopped.
shopped. She bought like 3 hats.
No, you gotta get out of there.
I know. I was like, I
Get
got
me out of here. Too expensive.
I was like,
Y'all can talk. Y'all can just continue to talk. Look at this.
Look at you.
Jeff, there's so much. First of all, I'm so excited by the toppings.
I want to tell you, I think it's great that you're showing a Texas chili.
Yeah.
It's not ground up. It's the chunks are in the same form where you seared them. It looks completely different, but this is what a chili really is.
I bet this would freeze great too.
oh, yeah.
Incredible.
Yep.
Incredible.
How is it? Is the steak tendy? Is it melt in your mouth?
So first of all, I love the viscosity of the sauce, if you will, right? But what I also really loved is like my first spoonful had some of those corn snacks that are crunchy. It's a nice antithesis to the chewy, smooth chuck that's just been, I mean, just cooked to perfection. Tender, flavored, the cumin is nice. This is so hearty, Jeff. I like your chili recipe.
Yay!
I have tons of chili recipes, but I like yours.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I would take it over a couple of my chili recipes.
This is true. I would too.
Yeah, this is.
I'm just making a quick soup. This is a really quick and easy corn and cheese chowder. I've had some onions cooking and some butter, and I threw in some pieces of bacon. Now I'll just stir this around and let it cook. And I've also got some diced bell pepper. I've got red, orange, and yellow because they're so pretty together, but you can use whatever you have on hand. Okay, I'm gonna let the peppers cook. And then I've shaved the kernels off of 5 cobs of corn. And I'm just gonna dump the corn in. This is a piece of cake, this soup recipe, but you wouldn't know it when you taste it. It is extremely impressive and yummy. Now stir the corn around. Okay, now I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of flour. Just sprinkle it over the ingredients and give it a stir. And now I'll just pour in some chicken broth as I dribble it across the counter. So I'm gonna grab 1/2 and 1/2. You can use milk instead of 1/2 and 1/2, but why would you want to do that? So I'm just gonna add a little salt, good amount of pepper, and just give it a stir. And And that is it. All you need to do is put the lid on, let it simmer for about 15 minutes or so. Oh my. Oh, it looks so good. It's really thickening up. The kitchen smells divine. Now I'm just gonna finish off the soup by adding some cheese. I've got a cup of Monterey Jack, which I think is great in soups because it's so creamy and it melts so nicely. And then I'm also gonna add a cup of pepper jack cheese. That's gonna add a nice kick. I'll stir it in. Oh, the cheese really, really sends this soup over the top. So good. And then last thing, I've got some sliced green onions, about 1/3 cup or so. And that is one yummy soup. But I think I should make sure it's one yummy soup. I'm gonna give it a taste. Yep, my suspicions were confirmed. It's perfect.
I decided I'm going to make Robin John one of my all-time favorite soups, lentil vegetable soup. It's a really rich, hearty soup with lots of chunky vegetables. First thing you need is 4 cups of chopped onions. That's about 3 large onions. Okay, next thing is leeks. So onions and leeks are milder than onions. About 4 cups of leeks, right into the pot. Next thing is garlic. 3 cloves of garlic, just roughly chopped. Okay, that's about 1 tablespoon of garlic right into the pot. Now lots of seasonings. 1 tablespoon of salt. I use kosher salt. 1/2 tablespoon, which is 1½ teaspoons of pepper. And lots of flavor with fresh thyme. About 1 tablespoon. Just run your finger down the stem, then the leaves come off. They're tiny, so there's really no need to chop them. Love the smell of fresh thyme, but it's strong. Just about 1 tablespoon. Then add 1 teaspoon of cumin. Cumin's used in a lot of ethnic cooking, Middle Eastern, Indian. It's not something I use often, but in the lentil soup, it really sort of brings out that earthy flavor of the lentils, which is great. Give it a big stir, and just cook that over medium heat for about 20 minutes until the leeks and the onions are just beautiful and tender and not browned. It's gonna make one big pot of soup. Next is lentils. Can't make lentil soup without lentils. I like to use the French green lentils. You can find them in specialty food stores. I just think they have better texture. So I need 2 cups of lentils. Just cover them with boiling water and let them soak for about 15 minutes. And then they'll cook faster in the soup. Okay, everything into the pot. 3 cups of carrots. 3 cups of celery. This is one big chunky pot of soup. I'm just going to cook that at medium heat for about 10 minutes until the vegetables start to become tender. 3 quarts of chicken stock. This makes a lot of soup. If you want to make this vegetarian, you can always use vegetable stock, but I really like the depth of flavor that comes from chicken stock. 1/4 cup of tomato paste. I actually love these tubes. It's a great way to store it in the fridge, what's left over. Just squeeze it in, give it a big stir. And next, the lentils. Just gonna drain the lentils. They're softened now from being in the boiling water. And they're gonna go right in. French lentils are really firmer than regular lentils, just have a much better flavor and better texture. This is really the most flavorful lentil soup. The guys are gonna love it. Bring it to a boil and then lower the heat and simmer it for about an hour, uncovered, so it gets really thick and absolutely delicious. This is actually quite a lunch. A hearty, delicious lentil vegetable soup drizzled with olive oil and sprinkled with lots of Parmesan cheese.
I'm making my beef stew stuffed into fluffy pita. It's rich and hearty, and it's all in a velvety red wine broth. Plus, it's actually pretty easy. It all comes together in one pot. So to get started, I've got 2½ pounds of chuck roast that I've chopped into 1-inch cubes, and I'm seasoning it with salt and pepper. And now I'm gonna dust it with some flour. And this flour is gonna help me develop that great brown crust on the outside of the meat, and that browning equals flavor. Okay, I'll get this cooking. I've got my pot heating here over medium-high heat. I'll drizzle in a little oil, and I definitely do not wanna crowd the pot, so I'll brown this in batches for a few minutes per side. And that sizzle is a sign that my pot is hot enough. So if I crowd the pot, the temperature will drop, and the meat will kind of steam, and it won't develop that brown crust. So it's really important to just give the meat space so that it can do its thing and get that flavor. That's some good color. Last batch of beef coming out. Next, it's time to cook the veggies. I'll add a little bit more oil to my pot, and then toss in my onions and my carrots. I'll season with some salt and pepper. And then just let these cook in the beef fat and start to soften. Oh, that smells really nice. I'll squeeze in some tomato paste. And I'll stir around and let it get a little toasty. I'll sprinkle in a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. And this is gonna create a roux, and it's gonna thicken the stew really nicely. Okay, I wanna let this flour toast so that that floury flavor can dissipate. I'm just using flour for the texture, not for the flavor. Next, I'll pour in 2 cups of red wine, signature beef bourguignon, and it just makes it richer and cozier and gives it so much depth of flavor. And as it starts to seep down, I'm gonna use that moisture to scrape up all the crispy bits that are stuck at the bottom of the pot, because those are super duper flavorful. I'll add a couple of bay leaves to infuse the stew with herbiness, and a couple of sprigs of fresh thyme. Thyme is so woodsy and hearty, and I'll bring it together with 3 cups of beef stock. I'll get my beef back into the stew now, and simmering the beef in the stew is gonna just make it so tender, it'll melt right down. It's gonna make it really flavorful too. I'll cover this up and let it simmer for 2 hours until the meat just falls apart. Oh yeah, that is some thick, bubbly stew. To finish it off, I'll toss in a few brown pearl onions. I'll stir these in and then whip up some chubby pitas. I mean, who needs bowls when you have freshly made, fluffy pita? This is my go-to recipe. You could use store-bought pita, but I like homemade so much more because it's extra fluffy. So to assemble, I'll chop off the top to expose its pocket. Hello. And then to reinforce the bottom, I'm actually gonna stick this hat right in there. And now I'll spoon in my stew. So I don't want it to be too saucy, so I'm just getting these nice big chunks. This is really nice and thick and stew-like. Okay. Oh, it's so warm, cozy. I'll finish with a little parsley. And now I'm getting excited. Here I go. That is so flavorful and so comforting. It's like one big Hanukkah hug.
I've started by browning a bunch of ground beef, the star ingredient, and now basically everything goes in. I've got some minced garlic, and I'll add a good amount of tomato paste. I love the tomato paste. It gives it just a nice, rich, tangy flavor. And I'm gonna stir the tomato paste in just to give it a chance to start frying a bit. Of course, Lad loves the soup, so that checks a very important box for me. The tomato paste is stirred in, so I'm gonna add a can of diced tomatoes with the juice. And this is part of what makes it a quick and easy version of hamburger soup. I'm gonna add a bag of potatoes O'Brien, which is basically potatoes, peppers, and onions. It's a really great shortcut ingredient, and once the soup is all done, you would never know you have shortcut potatoes in there. Yum, yum, it's looking good already. It kind of looks like a thick chili at this point, which, by the way, would be delicious. But I'm gonna turn it into soup by adding a bunch of beef stock. This is just out of the carton. And then some sliced carrots, and the carrots are sliced pretty thin, so it won't take long for them to cook. So I've kind of figured out ways to turn this hamburger soup into a really, really quick proposition. So now I need to add some seasonings. Got some oregano. Yum, yum, yum. And I like to give it a little bit of spice with some cayenne pepper, salt and pepper, of course. And then it all gets stirred together, and it is already looking absolutely fantastic. But I need to bring this to a boil, and then I'm gonna put the lid on, lower the heat, and simmer it for about 10 minutes. Right, this Speedy hamburger soup is done, and boy, does it look incredible. It is so, so thick. So I'm gonna get it served into a bowl. If you like a little more brothy soupiness, you could add more of the beef stock. So to garnish, I'm gonna add some minced parsley. And to me, this is the perfect thing to serve on a weeknight in the fall or winter with a loaf of crusty bread. And this is definitely a standby soup. I love it. Ooh. Mmm. Never lets me down.
Now, the sausage, andouille sausage, smoked sausage, two Louisiana staples, and look at how I've cooked them down. Rendered them down great. This is the way we treat the hot links at Johnny Garlic's when we make the Chipotle penne sausage dish. But you cook that down, and they kind of got a nice little crust to them. You're leaving that residual fat in there. Oh, that is exactly what I'm talking about. You're gonna use some fat to cook with anyways. You see me do it with jambalaya. You're gonna use that fat anyways. Why not render it out of the sausage? All that big flavor. Okay, so we'll let those sit there and cool down for a second. I'm gonna grab a little bit of bacon fat. We'll get a little bit of bacon fat into this and start working some of these veggies. I don't need much. It's kind of like how much fat did you get out of your sausage? If you need more, hit it with some bacon fat. Don't want to go overboard with it, so if you need to fortify it from there, a little peanut oil or a little canola oil, but that should work. And there's my bench knife. Okay, I'm gonna grab these Anaheims in first. That's the sound I want. We get the celery, some peppers, red bell peppers, some green, some onions. So what I'm gonna do is get these in, and I'm gonna actually add my flour right into this and let this roux develop as I cook down these veggies, okay? Get a little AP in here. That's about a 1/4 cup. Stir it in. Let it start to adhere to the veggies. Let it soak up some of that fat. Now down with a little bit of garlic. Didn't want to put that garlic in too soon. It takes some while for that roux to kind of get peanut butter color. That's what we call it, just darkening up a little bit. We'll let that garlic start to cook in, and I got to grab a couple spices for this. What do you think I'm going to grab? Exactly, cayenne. A little cayenne pepper, a little white pepper. Not going to go too overboard with this. About 2 teaspoons. Got to follow my own rule. Put it in my hand first. Comes just out in a big glob, and then the kids won't be able to eat it. I'm not going to overspice it. They can add a little hot sauce if they want to it. A little white pepper. Garlic's starting to open up right now. There we go. And, all right. So that gets your, Tell you what, now what I got going right here, a little smoked chicken stock. So I got this chicken that I brined, and then I dropped it in there with some, about 16 cups of water and some mirepoix, some veggies. And this is really coming together nice. Carrots and celery and onions. And look at that chicken. I'll let that cook a little bit longer, and then I'll take it out, let it cool down, shred it, and pop it back in here. Talk about popping it back in here. Let me get in the andouille and the smoked sausage. Chop those so they're a little more bite-sized. Okay? I always talk about my buddy Santos. This is one of his methods. How about if I just dunk it down in there and just grab that stock right there, and this can continue to cook that chicken. So I'll get in about 1 cup, 3/4 of a cup. Stir it around. So I want to make sure that that roux grabs that chicken stock nicely. You can smell that liquid smoke right off the bat. See that beautiful color that's going on with that? Look at that right there. We dropped some some chicken right in there. Let those flavors come together. Oh, this is awesome. I've got mine not super, super thick, but this chicken's actually gonna thicken up a little bit. Now we get into some of this beautiful gumbo. Look at that. Nice peanut-colored roux that we made with the flour. Cooking it down, didn't go too fast, didn't make any dumplings. Look at that. Andouille smoked sausage, the peppers, the garlic. The garlic went in right at the end. Little cayenne. Nice consistency, not too thick. I don't want it to stand the spoon up in it. Parsley, me. Ready?
It's a classic easy beef chili. I've got my onions cooking here in a little bit of oil. I'm gonna add to them some garlic. And I've got some minced jalapeno here.
So far, not controversial.
Yeah.
No controversy
So
here,
far.
right? So far.
Let's call
so
a
far,
flag
so
on
good. And I'm gonna add to it my ground beef.
All right, well, we're
Okay.
good. We're good.
All right.
We good?
20?
We good so far?
Yeah.
What do you want me to shred
Chef.
this? Is this bean cheese though? Is this made out of beans? No, you want me to shred this?
It's
and what-
organic.
Jeff.
Just pick the cilantro?
I'd like you to grate that cheese for me. I'm a big fan of buying a block of cheese and grating it yourself. I like the extra moisture content you get versus buying the bag of the shredded.
Amen.
I think you get more flavor, and
Amen.
it's a lot more economical as well. So I've got 2 pounds of beef here. I am just gonna brown that up. Let me turn my heat up a little bit, get a little color on it. Here, I'm gonna bring this down.
We call them
to-
West Virginia Mount Queso.
That's right, it's a Mount Queso, y'all. Okay, so I'm gonna put this down here with
I
our
missed
little
that one.
chili bar, because we gotta have all the toppings.
Just pick
And
this.
I like whole leaves.
I do
so just
too, I
pick
do
the
too, I do
leaves.
too.
Yeah.
100%.
You chop it
Yep.
up, it loses everything.
All right, so I'm getting some color on our beef here, and I'm gonna add the spices into it. Gotta have chili powder, of course.
Yeah.
And even though there's already garlic and onion in there, I bump it up with a little extra garlic powder and onion powder. I find that it just intensifies that flavor.
Bump it up.
A little bit of cumin,
Okay.
and I've got some oregano. I like to take the dried oregano in my hand and give it just a little break up. It kind of releases any oils that are in there.
Your
and
hands
flavor.
wonderful.
Massage it.
Yes. A good amount of salt.
Yep.
You really need a lot of salt in this. And pepper. Let's stir that in.
Can I make a confession?
Yes.
Please.
I really think there's some chili mixes already done that are really good.
Definitely.
And
definitely.
all I do is, no, I take them and no, I know, it's hard. Because, I mean, it's spice. So if you blend it right, it's okay.
Yes.
Definitely.
And then I amp it up even more.
Okay.
Or a taco seasoning
that?
packet can work great.
What is
in
today's
chili.
date? Put it in the calendar.
put it in the
Yeah,
calendar.
put it in the calendar. Oh, this smells so good. And this way, those spices just get a little heat on them, too.
They need it.
And kind of opens up their flavors. It looks perfect. And then I'm gonna add to it some tomato paste.
That's a good amount.
Yes, I
So
use
no
a-
chipotle. You don't put any chipotle in.
I don't do chipotle in it. If you
Really?
wanted to
Interesting.
add a chipotle and adobo and give it a little bit of smokiness, go
Okay.
for it. Absolutely. And then I like to
Complicated.
really stir that tomato paste in before adding any other liquid. All right, I'm gonna add some water in.
Ooh,
What'd you
water.
do?
I have hot. I have cold for this one too. There.
And I'm gonna add in some chopped canned tomatoes.
I like the chunky bits.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And a bay leaf.
Do
boy.
that.
Yeah, let's stir
Wow,
it up.
this is.
So when you wrote this recipe, you just take inventory of your whole entire pantry and just start omitting.
That's the
pretty
good thing about a
much.
chili too, you know?
It's like it's a clearer, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
got
clear
the
it
If you're
out.
throwing beans in it.
And then when it's about an hour before it's done, 30 minutes before it's done, add those beans in. And then what I like to do about 30 minutes before my chili's done,
You know what that
I
is?
add in white vinegar.
Yep.
Yep.
Just
That-
a little splash. That acid pulls the whole thing together. Now, I've got a little bar set up here. I've got chips, jalapenos, that beautifully shredded cheese, thanks to Jeff, some cilantro, sour cream. But I'll tell you what I really like for a chili bar.
Oh no.
Oh man, what's it be?
Bacon.
Tender?
Yeah.
What's that?
Katie.
Some big
Oh, big old taters.
Look at that.
What?
This is. I'm not gonna make it to the second quarter.
That's how you make them too, with a lot of salt.
What is that for, Katie?
I was going to
Not
make a comment
Okay.
when you were talking about the viscosity of the chili versus, thick versus thin, you could just serve this with a slotted spoon. So the people that want the thick can just slotted spoon it, and the people that want the thin can ladle it.
I think that's actually a wise idea.
Appreciating.
Yeah, for a crowd, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna, that's another way of serving.
Yeah, squeeze
here's
the ends,
another way of
baby.
serving it. Yeah, right.
That's
you know
a
what to
really
do.
good idea.
Hook it up.
This is a substitute for you, but spaghetti with the chili, you can't help yourself.
You know what? I just need a carb, Jeffrey. I just need
No
a
carb left
You can't help
behind.
yourself.
I can't help
TM.
it.
Okay, this is blazing hot.
Dude,
Don't
don't
bring
peek.
yourself.
You
Really,
blow on it a
really
little bit,
hot.
buddy. We don't want to lose you.
No, it's
Growing up, we used to. My mom would make elbow macaroni. We call it chili mac, and we'd have it on the bottom, super al dente.
Yes.
You sit there. I do like 50-50 and
That's
go
great
back
for
in for
these leftovers.
thirds.
Put it in a
Yeah.
little cast iron pan in the oven.
I also like to do a leftover chili pot pie and make cornbread and put on top and bake it.
You know what? This is so satisfying. It hits.
Would it be more satisfying with potato?
No, it hits every. I'm sure it's fine like that, but
I'm gonna go no
so
potato
good.
on
Fine like that.
It's delicious like this. It's
Listen,
just simple.
Not everyone
I love
likes
it.
everything.
This I like it in a bowl
Girl.
too. Just that way I can eat more.
I don't even want to eat it. It's so pretty.
This is molten,
Let me
dude.
take a photo really quick.
It's molten hot. Be careful.
I'm amazed at how much flavor there is because you put so few ingredients.
Hi guys, it's Drummond, the Pioneer Woman, and today you are going to make my lasagna soup, and I promise you won't regret it. It is so delicious. I'm gonna start by breaking up some lasagna noodles, and I'm gonna put them into a bowl, and then they'll be ready to drop in the boiling water later. I've already got boiling water going. There's nothing worse than having a soup or sauce all ready, and then you realize, oh no, I've got to bring a big pot of water to a boil. I'm just breaking them into random pieces so you don't have to follow any sort of size. Got those on standby. And now I'm going to slice up an onion. You just cut off the tip and then peel off the outer layer. This soup is one of my family's favorite things right now. It's kind of a mashup of lasagna and soup, which makes perfect sense. And I love things like that, where you take something like lasagna that you've made for years and years, and then you turn it into a completely different dish. So once you cut the onion in half, just lay it on its side, and you can cut nice half-moon slices, I call them. This is so much easier than slicing a whole onion because you have this flat surface that kind of stabilizes the onion. I don't have the fanciest knife skills out there, so I need all the little tricks I can get. Okay, I've just got the little bit. So the onion is sliced. I'm separating the onion slices. Now, of course, any lasagna recipe has to have plenty of garlic. So I've got 4 cloves. And the easiest way to break open a clove of garlic is just to take the knife, smash it with your hand. You can sort of think about the things that you're frustrated about this week. Whack a clove of garlic. Everything instantly seems better. You know, in the supermarkets, they sell bags of peeled garlic now, which is really a time saver if you use a lot of garlic in your cooking. I do confess to buying bags of peeled garlic cloves. So I'm actually a little rusty right now peeling garlic. I forgot how. All right, I'm just mincing the garlic, and it just kind of takes gathering it up, holding the knife, and just kind of rocking it back and forth. This is one of those things you can't rush. The more you mince it up, the more garlic flavor is going to wind up in your dish. Are you having fun yet? I am. Thank you for cooking with me. It's always more fun to cook with a friend than by yourself. Okay, the garlic is nice and minced. So I've also got a couple of fresh herbs, and they're 2 of my favorites, oregano and thyme. And I'll just strip the leaves off of the stalk. And I'll do the same thing to the thyme. Just hold the top and then take your fingers and just peel off the leaves. They come off so easily. Sometimes thyme is so delicate that you can actually just chop up the stalk along with the leaves. So I'm going to mince these up together. There is no better smell than fresh herbs. I live in Oklahoma and we have 4 seasons. So when I don't have herbs growing in my garden, I'm just not as happy an individual. Okay, got all this ready. Now I'm gonna get over to the pot and get things going. I'm gonna add plenty of olive oil, and I've already got the big Dutch oven preheated. I just added about 1/4 cup of olive oil, and then you wanna grab these beautiful sliced onions. Whoop. And this is why I wear floral or otherwise patterned tops. So if I slosh a little olive oil on myself, nobody will know. And then the garlic goes in. It smells amazing already. It's crazy how quickly that happens. And then all of these beautiful fresh herbs go in. Oh, I'm gonna grab a spoon. So you just wanna stir the onions and garlic with the herbs and get those softened. Oh, just glorious. This is a great way to start any soup recipe at all. So these are getting off to a good start. So I'm gonna add the meat. I'm doing a mixture of ground beef and then just some regular pork sausage. You can use Italian sausage. This is one of those recipes you can just open your fridge. If you have some ground beef that you need to use, if you have a whole bunch of sausage, you can just omit the beef entirely, do a sausage version. You could even do ground turkey. All of the recipes that I make are incredibly versatile, meaning if I'm out of something, I can swap in so many other things. I think that is the case because I live in the country and I've learned the hard way that if I run out of something I need, I'm out. I can't take the time to drive to town and go to the store. Okay, so you want to crumble up the meat, just kind of break it up with a spoon. And this is a good time to add some kosher salt. And this is not the last time you're going to see me grab the black pepper. I'm a big black pepper fan. And then it's just about stirring and cooking this until both meats are totally browned. So get up to that point, and then we'll keep moving forward. All right, the meat is totally browned. It took about 5 minutes. This hot Dutch oven, it doesn't take long. Now, depending on how lean your ground beef is, it's always a good idea to drain any excess grease. So I just kind of tilt it. The goal for me is never completely removing all the grease because there is flavor in there. I just kind of get out the big pools of it, but you want to leave a little bit behind because it does add to the overall flavor of the soup. I think that's good enough. And there's still a little bit in the bottom of the pot, and that's what you want. So now that the onions and garlic and meat are cooked, I'm going to start adding the other soup ingredients. Add some tomato paste. And you want to stir the tomato paste in and let it really get against the bottom of this hot pan. It almost kind of fries the paste and deepens the flavor. It kind of wakes it up in a way. And you just want to stir it around for about 30 seconds before you start adding the other things. And by other things, I've got a little carafe of the hard stuff. It's actually not hard stuff, it's just white wine. You can use red wine, white wine, whatever you have handy. And it's good to use something that you already have open. You don't have to use fine wine when it comes to making a soup like this. Oh, the smell of wine wafting out of a pan. I think that's one of the smells in heaven. Along with citrus, lavender. I have a list of smells in heaven. Okay, so now that the wine has partially evaporated, you want to add a can of whole tomatoes, and you can do diced tomatoes, stewed tomatoes. You can even do tomato puree if you're somebody that doesn't like to have big chunks of tomatoes. When I make my regular lasagna recipe, it always has big tomato chunks. So I kind of wanted the soup to be similar. Now, some fancy chefs get in there and squeeze the tomatoes with their hands. I'm just gonna use the spoon. Every time I try to squeeze a tomato with my hand, it either squirts me in the eye or winds up in my hair, and I'm trying to look nice for you guys, so I'm just gonna let the spoon do all the squishing and mushing. I really love this soup. I have 2 teenage boys still at home. My daughters are out of the house now. So the meaty, hearty, really home-style recipes are really front and center in my house these days. Both of my boys play football, so having a soup like this ready to go when they get home from practice is just my favorite category of things to cook for them. Okay, all the tomatoes are broken up, so the liquid for the soup comes next. I'm using 4 cups of vegetable stock. You can use beef stock, beef broth, chicken stock, chicken broth. Really, you just kind of want a flavorful liquid of any kind. You could even use bouillon cubes and dissolve them in some boiling water. In a pinch, I've done that for sure. Give it a stir, and then I've got some fresh parsley. I already pulled some of the leaves off of some parsley stems, and there's nothing complicated about this. I am not precise when it comes to picking the leaves off of herbs. I don't have time to be precise in my life. If there's a little stem in there, it's not gonna matter. And then with parsley, I like to chop it up, I call it kind of halfway, because I still like to see those pretty little flat leaves. You don't have to mince the heck out of it. All right, that looks fantastic. Now I'm gonna save some of this parsley for another little component I'm gonna make in a minute, but I'll add some of it to the soup. Give it a quick stir. And then I can't forget about my lasagna noodles. This is a good time to pour those in. All right, you need to bring the soup to a boil and then reduce it to a simmer and let it cook for 20 minutes. You need to cook the lasagna noodles, so take care of that, and I'll see you back here in a bit. So how does your soup look? Mine looks pretty darn good. It's been simmering away. It got a little bit richer in color. Looking great. I drained the lasagna noodles. You want to do that about 10 minutes in. You don't want to cook them all the way because they're eventually going to go back into the soup, and you do not want a mushy lasagna noodle. I'm going to wait on that because I'm going to make a really delicious ricotta mixture. It starts with ricotta cheese, and you want to add some grated Parmesan and the rest of the minced parsley that you cut up. Add that in, and then add some salt and pepper. This is very, very simple. In regular lasagna, you would make a ricotta mixture to put in between the layers of sauce and noodles. I'm gonna turn these into little dollops. I kind of call them ricotta dumplings that go on top of the soup once you dish it up. Oh, and this happens all the time. I totally forgot to add the basil. No harm, no foul, it's not too late. I'm gonna pick off a few leaves, talk about an herb that I love. Oh gosh, there's no replacement for basil. It is delicious. And this is one of the herbs that is the hardest for me to get in the wintertime in Oklahoma. So for that reason, in the summertime, I really go crazy. I plant so much basil to the point that it's just coming out of my ears, basically. Now, you can just kind of roughly chop the basil. I just rolled it up in a really rough ball. And I don't know if I can even call this chiffonade. I just kind of cut it into strips. And then you want to add the basil to the ricotta mixture. And now I can stir it up, now that I've added everything. Sometimes when you forget an ingredient, it's no big deal, like with the basil. Even if you forgot it in the ricotta, you could sprinkle it over the soup. The worst thing to forget when you're in the kitchen is some kind of a baking ingredient. I have a chocolate sheet cake that I make, and even after all these years of making it from memory, every now and then I'll forget to add the baking soda. And I don't realize it until I pull the cake out of the oven. and it's basically a little flat chocolate pancake instead of a cake. Those are some very dark days. All right, so it's good to have the ricotta mixture all ready to go. I'm gonna get back over here to this beautiful soup, and I'm gonna turn the heat way, way down. Now, I cannot leave well enough alone. This soup would be delicious as it is now, but if you add a little bit of heavy cream to the pot, it doesn't turn it into a creamy tomato soup at all. It just kind of takes the edge off of all of that tomato and all of that richness. Trust me, it is really good with the cream. If you want to omit the cream, that's totally fine too. Again, this is one of those recipes that's totally versatile. You can add a bunch of cream if you want. You can add a bunch of Parmesan to the soup. You can keep the Parmesan limited to the ricotta mixture. There are no rules in my kitchen. Hopefully it's the same in your kitchen. Now it's time for the broken up lasagna noodles. Those just go right in. And they're just under the al dente stage. You want to have a little bit of room for forgiveness because when the noodles simmer in the soup, they will keep cooking. How beautiful does this look? Now I'm actually going to get a few more leaves of basil just because I feel like it. This time you can just tear them right in. No need to use the knife. Sometimes when I do things like this, I tell myself I'm being rustic, but I'm actually just being lazy. I don't want to chop it up. How pretty does this look? All right, now just wait till you see it in the bowl. Okay. When you serve up this soup, you want to have a bowl that has somewhat of a wide rim so you can see all the gorgeousness. And I really like food to look pretty, so I make sure I get chunks of tomato, plenty of basil, of course, lasagna. I'm a lifelong pasta lover. Okie doke. And then I'm gonna add a little bit more basil to the top. You can keep adding basil or not. I don't think you can ever have too much. And then I'm gonna grab a little spoon, and this is how the ricotta mixture plays out. You just scoop a little bit of a round dollop and drop it right on. You can just do one, or you can do two. Get on there. Or, if you're me, you can do three. If one is good, three is better. That's my motto. And then as this sits in the soup, it's just gonna get creamier and creamier. Look at this, I have a little extra Parmesan left in the measuring cup. A little more basil. I told you I can't stop. Look at this soup, guys. I've been smelling it, and now I cannot wait to taste it. Oh, it is even more delicious than the last time I made it. It's so rich and meaty and hearty. Honestly, that cream really sends it over the top. It just kind of adds a richness. I taste the basil. I got a little piece of the ricotta. It's perfect. Lasagna soup. I hope you love it. I'm so glad you cooked it with me.
I've got 2 pounds of ground beef here. I'm browning a little bit. Jeffrey, just slice scallions.
I got it.
Wedge lemon, dice avocado. And once the meat is browned, I just put it into a bowl. This is 2 pounds of ground beef. Chuck.
Any ground beef?
Chuck.
Chuck, okay.
Big fan.
Love Chuck.
There's no 97.3 here.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Oh,
For chili, I want that layer of fat.
You want to see your reflection
on the
in
top,
the chili.
yeah.
You want to be able to do your makeup or blow dry your hair if you're Jeffrey in the
Exactly.
chili grease.
So I like to cook everything before and then just put it all in the slow cooker.
Okay.
I think there's something to a little stovetop before. Some things I just throw them in the slow cooker and that's it. I like the big pan and the brown. I can't quite get that surface area sear inside the slow cooker, but big fan, for example, a spiralized ham, apple cider, tons of spices, and just throw it on. I love stuff like that. Little olive oil, not too much. We need, just to get to the reflection in the chili. I love that.
Exactly. Piece by
8
piece.
cloves of garlic.
Wow, we could.
8, not 9. 8. 8. Okay.
1 Fresno chili sliced up.
How
you
you
can
doing?
leave out the seeds.
Fresnos are having a moment
love
this year, you know?
They're my favorite because they're flowery.
They
to me,
really
they're
are.
floral. Speaking of which, sliced red bell pepper. And I leave some things kind of big because this is going to cook for 8 hours.
It'll
people.
disintegrate.
Tomato paste, you need it.
You want it.
Tomato paste is just tomatoes cooked down, down, down. It's thyme in a tube. You know what I mean?
I like that.
Yeah.
You got your time in a tube.
And we just kind of let all this get nice and mixed together. In the slow cooker, a can of whole tomatoes. I always go whole.
Love it.
Lots of chili powder, 2 tablespoons, bay leaf, half a teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of ground allspice, 2 tablespoons of red pepper flakes.
I
Goodbye.
love the
Allspice.
allspice.
Oh, we're getting that Cincinnati vibe right there.
Yeah, you're right. Water. Gotta have that water.
Delicious.
Couple
I love.
cups.
You can't live without it.
Yeah, you could. I mean, you could put stock or something in here, but I just don't even think it's
If you're
necessary.
cooking it that long, you don't need to waste the stock on it.
I agree. It's 1 BTU burner I love. You get used to a restaurant, where
I know what
something's
that
cooked in 1 minute.
I know,
tell
it's,
you?
It's
I'm moving into a house, and I'm just trying to, my only question was, is there enough gas pressure? I could really care
you
less about
can-
anything else, because
That's the
I
only
have a guy,
question you
Jeezy.
ask.
I have a
that's
guy.
one of the only questions, because you cook all the time, and you're like, if it's a little thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, this looks
So this
so
is
good.
the sort of the beating heart of it, right? The onions, the garlic, the meat. And to my mind, there's something different about mixing it all together and then adding it. There just is. Yeah, watch the splatter. Jeffrey just went 20 miles away. Right in there.
Hey, self-preservation.
Right in there. Everything, I'm big on the heat-proof rubber spatulas to get everything. Just mix a little bit. You're gonna come back to this a little bit and stir. So just bring it down to the bottom a little till you see the bay leaf and some of those
see the
tomatoes.
bay leaf.
And then, of course, you add in 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar.
Okay.
Oh, ACV.
ACV in there, people. Look at you, Jeffrey's got everything all ready. Cover it, cook on low for 8 hours.
8.
Low
Okay.
8. That's a good in
Low
a
on
slow
8.
cooker is pretty much.
Not 6, 8.
You're good to go.
Now, 30 minutes before I add cooked black beans, stir them in. Okay. Scallions, avocado, diced up. I like a dice on the avocado, people. I do. I like those little bits. Sour cream cheese. Here it is, the moment of truth.
Oh, no.
This is one of my
Anybody from
favorite,
Jim's
favorite
Spaghetti
meals.
House watching whether my beef has that cookedness?
I don't think we're
do
ever
see
gonna
my
spend it.
reflection, though, Jack.
That's very important.
Look at this.
8
I
hours.
mean, this is
Meaty.
perfection.
Meaty.
Yeah, and I like a bowl with like a decent amount of surface area for those toppings. You know what? Help me top.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, it's not the
Topping
time
is
for the narrow
emotional, by the
bowl.
way. Scallion,
It is emotional.
Yeah, I like
avocado.
the little topping bar. It's like everybody picks
Like
what
all the
they
avocado.
want.
I think it says a lot about the individual person, what they put on. You're watching, like,
Oh, con todo. Excuse
really?
me?
Sour
Con
cream,
todo.
some cheese.
That means with everything.
Me too. I
Yeah.
put everything on.
Con todo.
So comforting.
what do you like?
Me on the chili,
I like something crunchy, a little peppers and some cheese. Maybe a little I like a little
something
too
crunchy
crazy.
and what?
You're not crazy?
cheesy.
A little cheesy.
What about
Sorry.
pickled jalapenos? You like that too?
Oh,
I
yeah.
do.
I like fresh jalapenos on a chili,
Yeah.
too.
Jeff?
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah? Anything
I'll
else?
take a
Spoon or fork?
spoon.
And the chips. You
Phenomenal.
gotta have those chips. You just hear silence, by the way. I think that's
That's
the
a compliment.
definition of a belly-warming comfort meal, is that no one's talking. Try to put beans in your chili in Texas and see what happens. You won't leave the state.
I like beans and chili. That's a controversial.
Me too.
They feel it's filler in Texas.
I
It's like,
mean, you
it's a
gotta
meat
have
state. You want meat in your chili, but there's nothing better than creamy beans, especially black beans. And I always tell people, if I do put beans in my chili, it's only gonna be black beans. I just love them. They're so creamy.
They're sweet also a little
And I
bit.
kind of think black beans go with cumin. And I love your cumin notes in here.
I do too.
Lightly placed, the little squeeze of lime at the end. And you truly cannot beat a chili bar where you get to make it your own and top it with your things, but this is perfect.
So I'm making this stew with boneless short ribs, which are my favorite cut of beef. Did you know that? Short ribs?
I did not know that.
Absolutely incredible. It winds up tasting like the very best pot roast that you've ever had, except better. It's like a luscious version of chuck roast. So I cut the boneless short ribs into chunks and I browned them. Look how brown these are. So brown. So I'm just taking them out for a minute. And in the same pot, I'm gonna add some onion chunks, big old chunks of onion, and carrot chunks and garlic. I'm gonna crank up the heat even more, and I'm gonna add some tomato paste. Tomato paste is one of the best tips I can give whenever you're making any pot roast recipe. Just add a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste, and it doesn't really give it a tomato sauce or base, but it just adds depth and interest and passion. It's so good. Okay, so I'm stirring so the tomato paste kind of hits the bottom of that pan. Look at this, delicious. So now for the liquid. Let's just cut to the chase here. 2 bottles of beer. And then a couple of cups of beef broth. Very savory, luscious stew. Squirt, squirt, squirt. And then some Worcestershire sauce and salt and pepper. So easy. You just want to be sure to start this much earlier than you need it because stew does take a while. Sprigs of rosemary and a couple of bay leaves, and then I'll stir it all together. Oh, forgot to add the meat back in. I almost put the lid on and cooked this for 2 hours.
Veggie stew.
That would have been awkward. Okay, so all this meat goes in, and you definitely want to hold it so all those juices go into. Beautiful. So now I'm gonna put the lid on, turn the heat down, and simmer this for 2.5 hours until that meat is fall apart tender. I like to serve it with egg noodles. Usually I use wide egg noodles, but these are the skinny ones. Oh, yum, yum. But I am never content just to serve noodles plain, so I'm gonna add some butter and a whole bunch of parsley, and then I always like to add a little bit of salt and pepper to the noodles. I think buttered noodles with salt and pepper are the ultimate comfort food. Just toss and let that butter just slowly melt. You can also add lemon zest. I like noodles with lemon zest, butter, parsley, salt, pepper. That's a yummy summer pasta.
And wine.
And wine, well, wine in a glass, for sure. Okay, the noodles are buttered, so let's check out this stew. Come over here. This stew. Ready? Oh.
Now we're talking.
Your sound effects are amazing, by the way. Thank you. So I'm gonna take out the bay leaves and the rosemary. It was so nice. It was all gathered up in one little section. And then I'll just use the ladle to get the stew into the bowl with the noodles. But look at this. That meat is so tender. It is absolutely falling apart. And you wanna get juice and all. You don't need to let the juice like drip out. Okay, how does this look, guys?
It looks
Good.
amazing.
It really does. You can spoon extra juice over, which I'm gonna do right now. Look, ready?
Yes.
Oh, gorgeous, gorgeous. Hearty beef stew over buttery parsley noodles. That is a bowl full of marvelous right there. I started by putting the multi-cooker in saute mode, and I melted some butter. I just dropped in some chopped bacon, and in goes some sliced onion. Pretty good start to a soup. And I'm gonna stir these around just to get them totally coated in the butter. Oh, it already smells so good. And to make the soup extra scrumptious, I've got some fresh oregano. And I'll stir this around. I'm gonna give it about 3 minutes to cook. Moving on, I've got some minced garlic. And this is corn and green chili chowder. So I'm using 2 cans of diced green chilies. I'm not gonna drain them, I'll just put them right in. If you wanna get fancy, you can roast your own green chilies. I didn't wanna get fancy. I'm already running late, so the canned chilies are a great shortcut. And then I've got some fresh corn kernels, And then I'll stir this around just a little bit longer. I'm gonna add the liquid, just low sodium chicken broth. I'm gonna add about 3 cups or so. I'm gonna make a slurry to thicken the chowder. So I'll pour a little more broth into the pitcher, and I'll add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. So the slurry goes in. I'll give it a stir. The lid goes on. Now I'm gonna set the seal, and I'm gonna let this pressure cook for 5 minutes, and then I'll release the steam, and it'll be ready for the final step. When the little button pops down, then you can pull off the lid. Oh my gosh, it's really amazing how much happens in such a short amount of time in a pressure cooker. It just looks like it's been simmering away for 2 or 3 hours. Now I'm gonna make this ultra creamy by adding heavy cream. That's what corn chowder is all about for me. Creamy and rich and luscious. You don't have to have a big bowl. A little goes a long way. So now I've got 2 kinds of cheeses, regular Monterey Jack, some pepper jack, just to give it a little bit of spice. Cheese is my favorite thing in the world. Now it needs just a little bit of salt and pepper. Okay, I'm gonna stir this all together. And while I do, let me show you how I serve this up. Everyone gets a bowl of the chowder. It is so pretty. Look at those flecks of color and that creamy cheesiness. Then a sprinkle of sliced green onions, a chunk of bread, and that's a working lunch. Totally easy.
So a little bit of olive oil, the onions right now. We're gonna use some Anaheims right here, okay? Some red bell, look at that, just sweating up nice. This Fresno chili here, I'm not too worried about the heat on it. Pretty mild, so I'll just give it a couple slices down the front. So far, so good, huh? Okay, add a little bit of salt to it. Let's get into dry chilies. Now, this is really the foundation of this chili. What we're first starting off is with some chili de árbol, which is nice and spicy, the ancho, and guajillo. So now I'm gonna reconstitute them with just a little bit of hot water, okay? I'm gonna do it right there in that pan. And those are gonna go directly into the chili in just a minute. Speaking of the chili, I need to get those peppers and onions out of there because now I have got some top round that I want to brown off. And we're talking about, I don't want it to be interrupted. I really want to build some crust, kind of like we're searing a short rib. So what I want to do is get all these out, because you leave just a little bit of this in there. There's a lot of moisture. It'll keep the meat from really browning up. Look how beautiful, huh? So we'll just hit it with a little touch of some salt, and we'll just drop it, crank that pan back up, right back in. There we go. Nice little sear gonna happen to that. And I also have some ground beef that I'll put in a little bit. I like to have 2 of the textures. It needs a little bit of this garlic. So I have these reconstituted guajillos, chili de árbol, and anchos, okay? Hit that, a little bit of power, puree it. There we go. We'll dump this right in here on with the meat, in with that garlic that I just added. That's where your real flavor is coming from. Let me drop this in, sweated peppers and onions that we had from earlier. And that all gets mixed together. Look at that. Look, take a look inside of this. Now it's time to go build another layer of seasoning. So I've done some salt and pepper, got the peppers and the garlic. Now we'll do a touch of cayenne, a little oregano, a little bit of cumin. Gotta have a little kiss of cinnamon. 2 quarts of beef stock. We're gonna let this go in here. It's gonna cook down, believe it or not, for 2 hours. Beer cheddar cheese sauce. So start with a roux, a little half and half. Not too much half and half because we're adding in a full beer. Nice amber beer, so you're gonna get that deep, rich beer flavor. Drop it in some sharp cheddar, a little touch of cayenne, dry mustard. Gotta have that little tang in there from the dry mustard. A little bit of Worcestershire, a little touch of paprika. Okay, so let that go. Get some cream cheese. We got beer, we've got chili. We'll lay that right in like that. And we'll just let this go low and slow till it breaks up that cream cheese. There we go. Okay, but what I want to do right now, I want to get a little bit of beer, and I want to get a little bit of masa harina. And I also want to add a little bit of paprika. There we go. So we're going to mix this up. So we'll just slowly incorporate this in. And this is going to work as an awesome thickener. It kind of plays right into the theme of Texas and Chile and Tex-Mex. You take a look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me that is not gorgeous. Right on top there. Look at that.
I've got some ground beef that I've totally browned in a pot with onion and garlic. And I'm gonna add a bunch of tomato paste. I love the kind in a tube because it's just like toothpaste, basically. I'm gonna do probably 2 heaping tablespoons because this adds such richness in a pretty short amount of time. So I'm gonna turn the heat way up, and I wanna smush the tomato paste into the ground beef and try to kind of get it, can you see that, Paige? Get it on the bottom of the pan and just kind of get the flavors of that tomato paste going. Just kind of release the magic of the tomato paste. Okay, so I'm gonna add some salt and pepper because the ground beef really needs it. And I need a little exercise today. And then taco seasoning. You can't have tacos without some kind of taco seasoning. Okay, so this is a shortcut taco soup, which means you don't stop and let things cook a million times. So I'm gonna add a can of tomatoes with green chilies, which is a staple around these parts. And then fire roasted corn and a can of black beans. And I am being very radical, and I am not draining the beans or the corn. And that's just fine because this is gonna cook so fast and over really high heat. So it's gonna be so good, and it already looks amazing. So then for the liquid, I'm just using vegetable stock. You can use beef stock, chicken stock, whatever stock. And then some hot sauce, your favorite hot sauce of your choice. And then honestly, talk about a one-pot wonder right here. Now all I need to do is bring this to a boil and let it cook really fast for about 10 minutes. Look how violently it is bubbling away. And that's the secret when you're making a quick, shortcut soup. You wanna just really bring it to a boil and let it just violently cook for, 10, 15 minutes. Whatever you got available in your schedule. Okay, believe it or not, this soup is ready to serve. And the thing is, this soup is perfect as it is, so you could just serve it without any adornments. But as you know, I like fixins, otherwise known as fixings. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to finish this. Look, this bothers me though. I have to fix this before we continue.
Yeah, that was bothering me.
I can't deal with stuff like that. It keeps me awake at night. Okay, so here, Paige, I'll just put this here so you can really get a good look of the serving. You can also use ground turkey for this delicious soup, but it has such great texture. It's just a triumph, basically. So whatever you put on tacos, you can put on taco soup. So I'm gonna add some cheddar cheese and a good old dollop of sour cream, which I love because you can kind of get little bitty bits of sour cream as you eat it, and it just kind of mixes. Look at all that. I added a lot. And then watch this is super fun. Corn chips, ready? And then just sprinkle. Oh my gosh. And then cilantro, of course, just to give it a little freshness. I mean, that took approximately 45 seconds to make, that whole soup. At least it seems that fast. It's perfect for teenagers, college students, middle-aged moms. Not naming any names, but I love this soup. Watch this.
You always do the eye roll.
Okay. I like the crunch. Ooh, hot. This is good stuff.
You all know how much my Gullah Geechee heritage means to me. So today, we're talking about West African peanut stew.
All right, so
I have minced up about a tablespoon of ginger. I'm gonna mince up 4 garlic cloves. Now I'm gonna dice 1 whole onion. All right, and I have a Scotch bonnet pepper. West African cuisine is known to be a little bit more spicy, but because I'm adding sweet potatoes, that natural sweetness is gonna offset the spiciness from the Scotch bonnet. Now, at home, I wouldn't advise you guys to do this without gloves. I am a professional, but I will wash my hands. All right, so I have a whole chicken here. That's about a 6-pound chicken. I've cut it up into 10 pieces. That's your thighs, your legs, your wings, and your breast cut in half. All right, now I'm gonna season my chicken. Simple seasoning, salt and pepper. All right, I'm gonna head over to my stove. I have my Dutch oven here. I'm gonna add some vegetable oil and get a nice sear on my chicken pieces. I'm gonna go skin side down first to get a nice crispy skin on the chicken. So my chicken is brown on this side. I'm just gonna flip it. Look at, the flavors are starting to build at the bottom of this pot. When you think about West African stews and Gullah stews, when we make our stews, the meat is basically on the bone. My grandmother tell you it's because all the flavor is in the bone. All right, so my second batch is ready to come out. I'm not cooking the chicken all the way through. I'm just getting a nice brown sear on both sides because the chicken will cook all the way through once I add my other ingredients and cover it. Now it's time to get my veggies in there. Got the onions, the garlic, the Scotch bonnet. It's all gonna cook in the flavors from that stuff stuck at the bottom of the pan. Let me switch over tools now, because now I got to get to scraping. I'm gonna get all that flavor up. And if some of it is still stuck on, don't worry about it. I'm gonna start adding in liquids. And that liquid is gonna also help get some of that nice seasoning from the chicken up from the bottom of the pot. Right now I'm gonna add in 2 cubes of chicken bouillon, a teaspoon of tomato paste. I'm gonna add this 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. Give it a stir before I add in my water. Okay, and it's called West African peanut stew for a reason because there's peanut butter in there. And in West Africa, they call it ground nut. So I'm gonna add about a cup of ground nut or peanut butter. All right, now I'm gonna add in 4 cups of water to kind of dilute some of that tomato and peanut butter. And now's the time I'm gonna add the chicken back. And while this cooks up, I'm gonna cover this and let this simmer while I cut up my veggies. So I have a small bunch here of collard greens. I'm gonna just give it a little chiffonade. That just means I'm gonna cut them into small ribbons. I have 2 sweet potatoes. I'm gonna make it to like 1-inch chunks. I have 2 Roma tomatoes that I'm gonna cut up into chunks. And I like using Roma tomatoes because they're firm and easy to cut. All right, so it smells incredible in here. I smell the tomato, the chicken, everything. Look at that. Look at the color. That peanut butter has kind of blended in with the tomato sauce. I'm gonna add in my veggies now, that Roma tomato, the sweet potatoes, and the collards. It may look like a lot, but this is all gonna cook down. All right, so I am gonna cover this and let this simmer on low. I'm gonna let it simmer for about 25 to 30 minutes or until I can pierce the sweet potatoes with a fork. I smell this stew going. Man, oh man. Oh, that smells incredible. How I know this stew is done is if I take one of those little sweet potatoes, and if my fork goes through it easily, it's done. That is solid.
I'm making a slow cooker white chicken chili. It's all the good things about chili, but with white beans and chicken, and boy, is it phenomenal. Put a bunch of chicken breasts in there, and now I'll whip up a spice mix. Let's start with cumin, coriander, which is really tasty, paprika, some crushed red pepper flakes, some oregano, and then salt. And instead of black pepper, I'm gonna use white pepper since it's white chicken chili. I'm gonna keep things pure and holy. I'm just gonna sprinkle the spice mix right over the chicken. And now I've got a bunch of good veggies to add. I diced up a bunch of onion. I mean, this is a pile, but this makes a big batch of chili. Okay, I've also got garlic. Can't have chili without a pile of garlic. And for heat, I sliced up some fresh jalapenos. I didn't even seed them. This is such a big batch that it won't be too overpowering. And then I've got 4 stalks of celery. This year, everything has changed in our household. Bryce is officially playing football for Pawhuska schools, so he's not going to the homeschool co-op in Tulsa anymore. Lad is one of the coaches of the high school football team here in Pawhuska. So they basically are at football practice all the time. Okay, just a little more chopping. That is a lot of celery too. A lot of onions, a lot of celery, a lot of flavor. Okay, I've got a couple of green bell peppers. I'm just gonna chop them up, reach in and pull out the seeds. I'm gonna keep the peppers in pretty big chunks. White chicken chili is so good. It's really basically like chicken and bean soup, but when you add all these chili seasonings, it pretty much turns into chili. We're definitely moving into that football time of year. It always sets in every August. First of all, there's high school football games. There's junior high football games. They watch college football on TV, pro football on TV, and when that's not happening, they're talking about football. Now, part of that picture is Lad and I have opposing alma maters. We both went to Pac-12 schools, and our schools are rivals. So when our 2 teams play each other on TV, I have to watch it in the other room because neither Lad nor I can stand to listen to the other one cheer on their team. It's amazing we've stayed married this long. We are a house divided. So the peppers go in. What I try to do is fill the slow cooker as full as I can, and that means we're gonna have lots of good leftovers. Okay, now in addition to the green peppers, I like to add roasted green chilies that are chopped. I don't even drain them, I just pour them right in. So in go the beans. These are Great Northern white beans, and I soaked them overnight and then gave them a good rinse. And finally, the liquid. Low sodium chicken broth. White chicken chili is so good because you can dress it up and make it elegant. Serve it with some really nice cornbread sticks, or you can dress it down, just throw it into a mug and eat it in front of the TV. Lid goes on. Now I've got a few more things I've got to do to the chili later. I'll fill you in on that while I run to town. I'll put it on 8 hours on low. I'm gonna go get B-Man. So I'm headed into Pawhuska to pick up Bryce at football practice. And just as I promised, I want to tell you how I finish off the chili. So 30 minutes before the cooking time's up, I'll add a mix of milk and masa to thicken the chili. Then throw in frozen sweet corn, stir it, and give it another 30 minutes. When the cooking time's up, there are just a few more steps before serving. I'll take the chicken out, shred it, and get the chicken back in. I'll add some lime juice, Monterey Jack cheese, and stir it together. So now it's time to serve up the chili. Get ready, it's gonna be delicious. Everybody gets a big bowl full of the good stuff with a dollop of sour cream, extra cheese, of course, chopped cilantro, and some rolled up warmed corn tortillas on the side to complete the picture. Oh my gosh, dinner cannot come soon enough. But wait, there's a great breakfast coming too. Do you ever get the feeling all I think about is food? If so, you're absolutely right.
thought I'd make cream of wild mushroom soup to start because I can make the whole thing in advance and then just heat it up before dinner. I'm starting with 5 ounces of each of 3 mushrooms, portobello, cremini, and shiitake. If you can't find all 3, just pick one. Okay, nice clean mushrooms. So the next step is to separate the mushroom stems from the caps. That one's just caps. Take off the stems. I love the nutty, sort of meaty flavor of the wild mushrooms. I'm gonna chop the stems, just a rough chop because it's all gonna get cooked together. And then for more flavor, I'm gonna chop a carrot. Any kind of vegetables you have that will flavor the stock, it's a great way to use them up. Okay, so now I'm gonna heat the pan. A tablespoon of olive oil, tablespoon of butter. In go the onions, carrots, and the mushroom stems. These are just gonna cook for about 10 to 15 minutes until they get really nicely caramelized. And okay, big sprig of thyme, right in. Just gonna let that cook. I'm gonna get the rest of the soup ready. So the first thing I'm gonna use is a leek. I know you've seen it at the grocery store, but people don't use it so much here. So, you need some butter and oil again, just so that you get the best flavor of the butter and the best burning temperatures of the oil. Leeks go into the pan, and those are gonna saute for about 15 to 20 minutes until they have great flavor. In the meantime, I'm gonna pour some water into the stock. I need 6 cups of water. So it's just gonna simmer away for about 30 minutes until it gets a really rich mushroom stock. And then later, I'm gonna add it to the soup. Okay, so the next thing I want to do for the soup is cut up the mushroom caps, like 1/4 half-inch slices. Okay, that's it for the mushrooms. I'm just going to go into the pan with the leeks and the butter. Just give them a stir. And those are going to cook for about 10 minutes until all the moisture from the mushrooms gets out into the soup. Okay, now I'm going to strain the stock. Every last bit. Okay, so the next thing is I'm gonna add a little flour to these mushrooms. It's amazing how much they've cooked down. So I need 1/4 cup of flour. What this is gonna do is thicken the soup. Just add it right to the mushrooms. Cook it for a minute. Perfect. Now I need 1 cup of dry white wine, whatever you have in the refrigerator. Oh, that smells great. Okay, some fresh thyme leaves, about a teaspoon. Give it a stir. And now I'm gonna add the stock. Look how gorgeous that is, just from the stems. Okay, last ingredients. So 1 cup of cream. And then 1 cup of half and half. And 1/2 cup of fresh parsley. Give it a stir. So I'm gonna chill this, and then I'm gonna heat it up just before dinner.
This is fantastic.
Thank you.
Actually, this is the best soup I've ever had. It is delicious.
Thank you.
Really.
I'm making a big batch of my Chipotle chicken chili. Today is a little bit celebratory in nature, and this is just the thing. Now, I've got some onions and garlic that I've been sauteing away. They're nice and soft by now, a little bit golden. Now, I chopped up a whole bunch of chicken breasts, 4 pounds to be exact. I cut them into bite-sized pieces, and the whole thing's just gonna go right in. And now all I have to do is just stir the chicken around until it's lightly browned. Now, one of my favorite ingredients of this chili is good old Mexican beer. I'm gonna crack open a couple of bottles, not to drink, to put in the chili. And I'll add about 1.5 bottles, just pour it right in there with the chicken. Now I'm gonna save the rest of this for later after the chili has simmered a while. All right, now I'll just stir the beer and the chicken around, Okay, the pot is so hot that the beer is already starting to bubble up. It's gonna reduce pretty quickly. So I'll go ahead and add the rest of the ingredients to the chili. I've got 2 cans of diced tomatoes and I'll just pour them in, juice and all. Okay, now this is Chipotle chicken chili, so I'm grabbing 2 canned Chipotle peppers. They're packed in adobo sauce, and these things are very spicy. And I'll just give them a quick chop. For extra flavor and smokiness, I'll scrape in a little bit of the adobo sauce that they're packed in. This stuff is just full of flavor. Now, I've got 3 kinds of beans. I love to have a chili really thick with beans. So I'm using kidney, black, and pinto beans. I love this combination. Now, I'll just give the chili a stir. Oh, it's looking so good. Now for the spice, I'll add 2 tablespoons of chili powder. And this is another area you can add more or less depending on who you're feeding. And then 2 tablespoons of cumin, which is one of my favorite chili spices to use. And then it needs quite a bit of salt, so I'll add about 2 teaspoons and then I'll taste it later and make sure it's adequately salted. A little bit of black pepper. Now the chili already looks absolutely delicious, but after it cooks for a while, man, oh man, it gets nice and thick and rich. It takes a very steady hand for this. Try not to make too big of a mess. Ah, and it fit. It's a happy ending. Okay, now I'll get this over to the slow cooker. Put the lid on, turn it on, and now it just needs to cook slowly for about an hour.
I'm gonna make some split pea soup. Okay, 2 tablespoons of olive oil and a cup of onions, about 1 yellow onion. I always put the onions in first because they don't burn as easily as the garlic. Just mince the garlic finely. You know, there's no real secret to mincing. The only thing you want to do is hold the tip down with 1 finger and then move the handle up and down. Otherwise the knife jumps all over the board and it's hard to control. Okay, garlic's ready. Okay, now some flavors. Definitely need salt and pepper. 1½ teaspoons of salt. I use kosher salt. 1 teaspoon of pepper. And ½ teaspoon of dried oregano. Oh, can't get that. And just stir that around. Let that cook with the onions. Wonder how TR is getting along with his assignment. Sounds like a secret mission. I think the onions and garlic are done. Hope TR likes this soup. It's nice to have something that's actually delicious and good for you. I'm gonna add 2 cups of carrots, chopped. I like big chunks. You want this to be really good, hearty, chunky soup. Okay. And a cup of diced potatoes. Nice thing about the potatoes is you don't have to peel them. You don't have to bother. Peel tastes just fine. It's gonna cook for a long time. And who wants to peel anything that small anyway? Okay, right into the pot. 8 cups of good chicken stock. This is homemade. If you can make it homemade, it's really worth it. But if not, you can find a good chicken stock in the grocery store. Okay. And now we're going to put in split peas. So I'm going to use about 1 pound of split peas, which is about 2 cups of split peas total. But I'm going to only put in about 1½ cups to start with, so it makes a really thick soup. And then I put the rest in right about halfway through the cooking, so you get really chunky, just the bite of split peas also. So I'm just gonna let this simmer for about 40 minutes. This is gonna be a really nice soup to come home to. So split pea soup is half done, looking pretty good. So at this point, halfway through the cooking, I'm gonna add another ½ cup of split peas. And what that does is, then the split peas that are already in there get really soft and make the soup really rich and thick. And then these split peas will cook a little less, so they'll have a little bit of bite to them, which is really good. I like both textures. Continue to let the soup simmer and just cook it for another 40 minutes. It's gonna be rich and delicious and so good for you.
All right, now what I got going over here, well, I've got some jalapeno peppers, some red bell, and some onions cooking down in a little bit of pancetta bacon fat, as well as some butter. Now here's a little trick I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna slide this back a little bit, kind of put my burner back here on this side, let the onions hang out over here on this side. When you wanna make a great burger, get some boneless chuck or some boneless sirloin and have the butcher grind it for you and make it. Well, you throw some boneless chuck into this chili, you're gonna be a winner. Okay. Run that over right into what I'm showing you here, about a 1/4-inch piece, because it does need to cook down a little bit, but take a look at that. Little nuggets of deliciousness, okay? So these bad boys back into the hot side of the pan. And I got some Anaheims and Poblanos that I went through here and roasted and then threw in a bowl covered with plastic, let their own internal temperature sweat their skins off. And this is going all into my Dragon's Breath chili, which you see working right here. Wow, I got some peppers, some boneless chuck, and some onions going down, some jalapenos in there so far. I need to clean this last pepper up and get this skin off of here. Now, saving all that for my compost and get these in. The roasted flavor of these peppers is really gonna add some depth to this chili. And that's kind of one of the things about my chili is it's got a lot of layers. Slowly cooking the peppers, slowly cooking the onions, getting the garlic in there, kind of letting everything go at its own rate, its own stage. And these get mixed in like this. Now, I've got some Italian sausage here. It's gonna go down. So you're gonna get great flavor out of this from the pork, as well as some fat mixed into it. Fat is flavor. And then look at that, little ground chuck and chili grind, so nice and thick. So got different textures of meat, different layers of peppers, different styles of flavors. There's some real complexity to this. Well, a little granulated garlic, of course, has got to work its way in there. About 2 teaspoons to a tablespoon. A little coriander, can't beat that flavor. There's, like I said, we talk about complexity. Same amount there. Little hot paprika. Now, a lot of times I'm talking about paprika and it just being kind of a smoky paprika or neutral. This has actually got a little bit of kick to it. There's gonna be some of the dimension of heat. We got the jalapeno in there. A little granulated onion, even though we have some in, the granulated will actually carry the flavor further. And a little bit of cumin, cumino. You can't beat it, especially with a little southwestern influence in this chili with some of the roasted poblanos and Anaheims. Okay, everybody in the pool so far. Cayenne, this is where you're getting the big heat from. But I'm not gonna make, with having the boys, Hunter and Ryder, I don't wanna make it too spicy. And a little chili powder. Okay. Now, I deglazed this with some beer, hit a little chicken stock, tomato paste, tomato sauce, kidney beans, pinto beans, everybody in the pool, and let it go low and slow. Look at this, okay? Now, let me just get a little taste on this real quick, because I need to add some salt and pepper. Little fresh cracked black, and a little touch of some salt. Stir that in. This is on point. Okay, so let me actually build this up real quick. I like to throw some fries down around the sides. There we go. Get this bad boy in here. Right on top of some of the fries. Hit a little bit of the cheese on top. Some green onion. Get in for another taste.
Kiana travels a lot, so I know she wants a good down-home, low-country meal, so I'm making her some Gullah Gumbo. In our culture, stews are very light, bright, tomatoes, veggies, things like that. So my gumbo is gonna have that, but it's gonna start with that traditional base, what they call in New Orleans a trinity. I guess it's the trinity in our culture too. So Gullah cooking is all about one-pot dishes. It's about evoking flavor with little to nothing. And the reason for that was to make something that could last. A soup can go a long way. A stew can go a long way. I'm gonna head over to my stove here and make the roux. And a roux is just basically flour and some type of fat. It thickens it up, it gives it flavor, it gives it color. I got about a cup of canola oil. You need an oil with a high smoke point because it burns quickly. And the thing about a roux is you gotta stand by that pot. 1 cup of flour. Break down the oil in the flour. I have my Dutch oven on about a medium-high heat. And what I'm doing right now is actually burning the flour and the oil. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the start of a roux. You gotta brown it. But for a Gullah gumbo, it's gonna be on the lighter side because I'm not cooking the roux as long, but it's still gonna have lots of flavor. And I'm starting to see that peanut butter color that I'm looking for. And it's just basically that flour is just, you know, browning with the oil. So keep scraping. And if you start to see that it's burning a little too quickly, turn your heat down just a little bit. And we're almost there. All right, I'm gonna add my veggies in now and cook my veggies down with the roux. Look at that. Ooh, what I'd like to do right now is start adding in my spices. A few pinches of salt, black pepper. And because it wouldn't be me if I didn't add my house seasoning, some smoked paprika, onion powder, garlic powder. All right, so I'm adding a pinch of mace. Mace is almost like nutmeg. It smells like nutmeg, it's very bright. And if you can't find mace, you can always use nutmeg. A pinch of gumbo filet. Gumbo filet is ground sassafras plant, all right? I'm gonna add 2 bay leaves in there. Now I'm gonna grab my garlic and tomatoes. And I like to add in my garlic and tomatoes at this point because I don't want to cook out that garlic flavor. I want it to be really pronounced in the gumbo. And tomatoes cook down fairly quickly, so I like to add it in at this point as well. Now for the liquid. I'm gonna add in about 3 cups of seafood stock. So just about this whole box, leave a cup. I'm also adding about 3 cups of chicken stock. And the reason I'm mixing the stocks is because I'm adding smoked turkey and I'm also adding seafood. Gotta add the shrimp. It wouldn't be Gullah if I didn't. All right, I'm gonna bring this to a rolling boil. I'm gonna also add smoked turkey wing. My grandmama and them always added some type of smoked meat to help enhance the flavor of whatever stew they're making. Okay, so I'm gonna let this go, uncover, just let it simmer. After an hour, I'm gonna add the lima beans. I'm gonna let the lima beans cook up in this. And then last but not least, you know I'm gonna throw in some shrimp. Of course, I'm gonna add traditional Gullah crab rice to the top of that gumbo. I'm gonna heat up 2 cups of chicken stock because it infuses flavor into the rice. This is about half of this box. For every 1 cup of rice, you use 2 cups of liquid. And it's important to rinse your rice. Let me tell you why. You gotta get that starch off the rice. Once my water runs clear, you know you got most of the starch off. My stock has come to a boil. I'm gonna add my rice, bring it down to a simmer and cover it. All right, while that goes for about 15 minutes, I'm gonna cut up my Trinity. Got a tomato I'm gonna use a little later, and of course, garlic. Crab rice tastes just like it sounds. It's crab meat and rice. Now we like to use blue crab claw meat because it evokes more of that crabby flavor. If you wanna be traditional, you gotta use claw meat. And if you wanna go old school, you'll sit there and crack some blue crabs and add that meat into the rice. That's how my great-grandparents used to do it, okay? Got about half of this bell pepper that I'm dicing up finally. All right, add it to this bowl. And I got 1 clove of garlic, of course. Y'all know I like my garlic. You know what, to make life easier, I'm just gonna add the garlic to the veggies right there. Right now, there's so much flavor going on here, everything is just gonna meld together, it's gonna be awesome. Let's get this veggies sauteed. What I like to do is start my crab rice with a little butter and oil. I like to use the combination of 2 types of fat. Butter has a little bit more water content. So to really get a nice fry on my veggies, I like to add oil. And while that's getting hot, it's been about 15 minutes. Let's see if the rice is done. My rice is nice and fluffy. Let me tell you another secret to getting the perfect fluffy rice. After it's done, you turn the heat off, put your top back on, and let it steam off the heat. Your rice will be nice and fluffy and not overcooked. Let me add the onions, the garlic, and the celery. A little salt to draw out some of that water. Ooh, smells so good. All right, so I'm just cooking it till it gets a little softened and the onions turn translucent. I'm gonna take my rice, add the rice to the pot. My grandmother and my mom, they call everything in the house a pot. Even though it's a pan, it's a pot. Get all the crusty stuff. We're almost like making fried rice. Turn my heat down just a little bit. I'm gonna grab my crab meat. This is a pound of crab claw meat. To really get that crab flavor, you gotta use the claw meat. I'm gonna grab some of my house seasoning, 2 heavy pinches of that. And last but not least, tomatoes. A pop of freshness. It's gonna also give it a pop of color. Crab meat, rice, bell pepper. I tell you, this is a meal in itself. Let me close this up right now, because I tell you, I'm about to sit down and eat a bowl of that by itself. So this has been going on for about an hour. Let me add my lima beans. Ooh, what is Gullah gumbo without lima beans? Every stew, every soup my grandmother makes, she adds lima beans. And that's why I add lima beans to my gumbo. This turkey is starting to loosen up a little bit. I'm gonna pull that turkey apart, and it's gonna be a part of the meat too. The color is beautiful. Those lima beans look great. I got a pound of shrimp that I've cleaned, deveined it, deshelled. And had I put the shrimp in earlier in the process, it just would have been overcooked. And who wants tough shrimp? No, 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 no. Now I'm gonna take my turkey wing out and shred it and put it back into my Gullah gumbo. Not only do you get a bite of shrimp, you're also gonna get a little bite of smoked turkey. I'm gonna put the bone back in there with the shredded meat.
My friend Patricia's coming after a really long trip from Paris. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to just greet her with like big steaming bowls of chili? But since she's being really good, I thought maybe instead of making beef chili, I'd make chicken chili. So I've got about 4 cups of onions and 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and they've cooked until you can really smell them. About 10 minutes. And then I'm gonna add lots of good stuff. 2 tablespoons of chopped garlic. This is gonna be really good. You wanna cook the garlic for just a minute so it doesn't get really bitter. And 2 yellow peppers and 2 red peppers. This is a really quick way to cut peppers. Just straight down. And then what's left over you can use for snacking. And I'm just gonna do big chunks. I think chili should be big chunks of good stuff. So, peppers. Okay, now all the good spices. First thing, of course, is chili powder. So I've got a teaspoon of chili powder. Teaspoon of cumin, which is a really essential ingredient in all chilies. And then these are the things that make it hot. Red pepper, just sort of a pinch of it, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon. And then cayenne pepper, which is really hot. So use it at your own risk. I like when things have a lot of flavor and a little bit of heat, but if you like it really hot, just add more. So 2 teaspoons of salt. This is great. And I'm gonna cook that for about a minute while I get the tomatoes ready. I always make this with canned tomatoes. Life's too short to peel a tomato. So I'm just gonna chop them up really quickly. I'm gonna put in 2 28-ounce cans of tomatoes. Try not to get it all over the kitchen like I do. And into the sauce. Give it a stir. So most chili has cilantro in it, but I personally hate cilantro, so I'm gonna put basil in instead. It gives it great flavor. Just take the leaves off. And just give it a really rough chop. So maybe about 1/4 cup should be good. Wonderful. So it's gonna cook for about 30 minutes. So this is a chicken that I cooked on the bone with the skin on it, and it really keeps it moist. I just tested all different kinds of ways of doing this, and I found it's so much better roasting it than it is to boil it the way you normally do it for a chicken like this. Patricia's on a book tour for her new book, Provence, and I can't wait to see it. So just sort of tear off the bone with your hands. It's the best way to do it. So big chunks. I want it to be really delicious and chunky. Right into the pot. And just stir it around. This is gonna cook for about 20 minutes so all the flavors get into the chicken, the chili, cumin, basil, tomatoes. So we got all kinds of toppings. Cheese,
Oh, I want some
tomatoes,
cheese. I love cheese.
little sour cream. Gotta have a
Yeah.
little sour cream.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Some chips.
Did you just create this like in the shower one morning or something?
Well, you know, I always made beef chili, and I just
Right.
thought, wouldn't it be healthier if I made chicken chili?
Today I'm making some classic pub food, a little meal of my favorite things. Some soup with some blistering tomatoes and melted mozzarella cheese oozing over the top, and with it, a hamburger. Now I start by blistering some fresh tomatoes in a little bit of canola oil. So I cut an X in the bottom and I core the top. That allows air to pass from one end of the tomato to the other, which means while I'm blistering them, the skin is gonna come off a little bit, get charred, and give my soup this added intensity. I'm gonna use my trusty cast iron skillet, and I'm gonna get it roaring hot. I think food is a lot about the weather. If it's cold outside or it's rainy, it makes me wanna make a soup that feels like I'm putting on a jacket. So I can hear that crackling sound of the skin. Let's give him a little flip and see what's happening. Now, the really cool thing about this technique is it stems from watching my mom char peppers on the burner. She would just throw a pepper right on the burner, turn it up high, char the whole thing, and that wonderful smoky smell of the skin charring was so appetizing to me. This soup recreates that feeling, but chars the skin of tomatoes instead. So once the skin starts to come off the tomatoes and peel away and char a little bit, that's when I add 1 tablespoon of regular sugar. Tomatoes that are fresh like this have more acidity, but they need that little secretarial assistance, that pinch of sugar for added sweetness. Now to cook them and finish cooking them until they're tender, I want to add a little bit of liquid, but a liquid that's dry, that's going to really add flavor. 1/4 cup of dry vermouth. Now when adding this, I just shut off the heat so I don't have to worry about a 5-alarm fire. Once I've added the vermouth, I'll just let it simmer on the stove over a nice low heat and just kind of let those tomatoes get nice and soft and tender. I always like to add that fresh element that really takes the soup the extra distance. So I peeled a few shallots. One of my favorite vegetables because they just have a natural sweetness, but they also bring that little oniony bite to the table. They're really versatile. I have to tell you, I grew up in Midtown Manhattan, and on the corner, there was a pub. It was called Mulligan's. It was kind of dark and scary and gloomy, and it had all these amazing smells. Brisket cooking, stroganoff, braised chicken. Scary? Yes. Exciting? Yes. To a young girl walking by, something strangely enticing about the pub. And I think that's where I developed my association with pub food, the weather, a certain mood. So with the 3 shallots, I'm chopping up 10 cloves of garlic. And I'll just take that, swoop it right up, and go into the pot. Add a pinch of chili flakes, a 1/4 teaspoon, and that's just enough to give it a little kick without being spicy. And a tablespoon of oregano. A pinch of white pepper, and a pinch of salt. Just to start drawing the water out of those garlic slices and shallots. A little stir with a wooden spoon, the shallots, the garlic, take a little nose bath, take a minute to smell the flowers and enjoy this. Once this starts to kind of caramelize and cook down, get a little translucent and a little brown, that's when I want to add the canned tomatoes. And I just add 1 can of peeled tomatoes. So the peeled tomatoes are cooked already, so they have a developed sweetness from being cooked that the fresh don't have. And that's why I like to use half and half. The acidic freshness of the fresh tomatoes, and then the more developed sweetness of the canned. But whenever I make a soup like this, there's never enough liquid. Let's add a little water. And to this, I'll add a little bit less sugar, 1 teaspoon. So now I have the 2 halves of my soup cooking. Now this is the kind of soup that I'm gonna put in a crock. After I've poured this delicious combination of fresh and canned tomatoes into my crock, I want there to be that extra layer of bone-warming comfort. So I always turn to a loaf of sourdough bread for that. And I just tear a piece of the sourdough bread, and it has to be enough so that it can perch on top and overlap just a little bit. I'm gonna just toast those pieces of bread at 375 degrees until they get all crunchy. I'll pop these in the oven dry. I don't wanna put any olive oil or butter or anything on that bread because I wanna maximize the crispiness by making it dry, because I wanna top it with some fresh mozzarella that I will just break into small pieces. I like to use some fresh mozzarella for this. It has a really clean taste, which picks up on the fresh tomatoes we use in the base of our soup. And when the toast is ready and that soup goes in these ramekins, the cheese melts, we are gonna be transported to a Midtown pub for the ultimate comfort moment. So I've let these tomatoes cook down on the stove until they're nice and tender, and you can see that wonderful fresh tomato pulp there, combined with the charred aspect of the skin. Now, as you crush these, you'll get this wonderful liquid, the combination of the juice from the tomatoes, the cooking liquids, some seeds, some charred skin. This is an essential part of this soup's uniqueness. Once these are crushed up a little, we come to the other part of the soup, part two, the sliced garlic, the shallots, and the canned tomatoes. And this is sort of like the roaring ocean, and this is the nice calm bay, and we're combining them. I'm only gonna puree the fresh tomatoes so that that wonderful charred taste goes all through the soup. Pop that in the blender. Now for that combining of the two parts. And this is really the final step in this soup. Just stir that right in there. And then taste it. I get that charred taste, that hint of chili flake. Sometimes I add just a touch of olive oil at the end just to round it out a little bit. Just pour that olive oil right in. Just a little bit. I kind of don't want it to get completely mixed in. Just leave it a little bit separated so it has that wonderful rich gloss on top. In the meantime, I have this wonderful charred tomato soup, that bread that I so delicately and precisely measured, and then that cheese perched on top. And now I'll just pop these in the oven under the broiler and let that cheese get all melty and fantastic.
Okay, I just browned a whole bunch of beef. I salted and peppered it, sprinkled it with flour before I fried. I'll start with a bed of big chunks of onion. I've also got big chunks of carrots. Love carrots in stew. Some mushrooms. These are just brown mushrooms. You can use white, a mix of wild mushrooms, anything you want. With stew, there aren't many rules at all. I've got some fresh herbs, rosemary and parsley, and I'm just gonna throw them in whole. This is gonna cook for so long that all the flavors will definitely have a chance to release. I have some red potatoes and I scrubbed them really well, cut them into chunks. This is where the beef goes in. For the meat, I used rump roast. Rump roast is one of those meats I never can quite tell what to do with, but really it's great. If you cook it long enough, it turns out yummy and tender. But I am not content just to use beef in my beef stew. I'm gonna cut some fried bacon into chunks, sprinkle that on. Now every stew needs a really good cooking liquid, and what better way to whip up one than to pour in some beer. I've just got a bottle of beer. I'll pour about half of it in. I know just what to do with the rest. That'll come later. And then I always add a little bit of tomato paste to any stew recipe I use. Gonna add most of the can, some garlic. Ooh, garlic and beer, how good does that look? And a dash of Worcestershire sauce. And then I'll whisk this together. This gets poured all over the top. Now, because of the tomato paste, that's pretty thick, so I have some beef broth. And I'll pour in just enough. One last thing to add, I just can't help myself. A whole jalapeno, I just sliced it in half, didn't even seed it. That is gonna be one yummy stew. I'll put the lid on, set it on low for 6 hours, and that is gonna be dinner for the Drummond house. Take a look at how it's gonna play out. First, I'll make buttery parsley lemon noodles to go on the side. I'll melt butter with olive oil and throw in garlic, parsley, and lemon zest. Mix it together, then add the fettuccine and toss it around. Look at how it all coats the pasta. Yum. Then the juice of a lemon, a sprinkling of salt and pepper, a quick toss, and it's ready. So everybody gets a big heap of noodles on their plate. Then the stew, beef, vegetables, and gravy. Simply delicious. A little parsley, and that's the whole scrumptious package.
First thing I'm going to do is make a big pot of lobster corn chowder. It's kind of corn chowder with the volume turned up. What I've done is I've gotten 6 cooked lobsters. I mean, they're complicated enough to get the meat out without having to deal with those big pots of steaming water and screaming lobsters. Okay, so that's the meat from 6 lobsters. I'm just going to put it aside and then put it in after I make the stock. The next thing is the corn. Can't make lobster corn chowder without corn. So I've got 5 ears of corn. This is the 5th. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the kernels right off the cob. And that's pretty easy. And I'm going to use the shells of the lobsters and the corn husks to make the stock. Okay. And in my biggest pot you can possibly find, I have 2 cups of onions that I've been sauteing in some butter and olive oil, just beginning to brown. So the first thing is half a cup of cream sherry. Just has that kind of sweetness that lobster and corn have, and it really is sort of classic with lobster soup. So delicious. And I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of paprika, which is basically ground red pepper. It just has wonderful flavor, and it also has great color. That's 1 and 2. And just cook that for about a minute until it all blends together. I love the smell of the onions and sherry. Okay, next, 8 cups of milk and 4 cups of cream. And 2 cups of white wine. Remember, always use a wine that you would drink. You don't want bad wine in your stock. You'll have bad stock. Okay, and then the lobster shells and corn. Just this entire thing's gonna go in, and it's just gonna flavor the stock so beautifully. No spoon. This is why you need a big pot for it. And all the juices from the lobster, everything goes right in. Lid on, 30 minutes, we're gonna have great stock. Okay, so I've got 2 tablespoons of olive oil just heating away in the pan. I'm going to put the bacon in. And what that's going to do is going to render some of the fat out of the bacon and cook it for about 4 to 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to take it all out with a slotted spoon. I'm going to put the bacon back into the soup later after it's cooked. And it'll still be crisp and flavorful. It won't sort of melt into the soup. And then I've got all that wonderful bacon fat that I can cook the vegetables in. How bad can that be? Okay, so I'm going to add all the potatoes. 4 cups of potatoes. Lots of potatoes. 3 cups of onions. Now it'll get browned and caramelized flavor. And 4 cups of chopped celery. Okay, and all the corn. Add this to what I'm sauteing in the soup. So these are all the vegetables, and then later I'm going to add the stock. Big pot of stock. I'm just going to strain it right here. You just want to make sure you get every bit of the stock. Let it drain for a minute. So what I've done is really get all the flavor I can possibly get out of all the corn and all the lobster. So this stock is going to go right into the soup. It's going to cook for about 15 minutes. This just smells incredible. You can really smell the sherry and lobster, corn, all the vegetables. I'm just going to add a few things to make it really chunky. It's going to be delicious. All the lobster that I had, I cut up in big bite-sized pieces. I just love that it's so chunky. And the bacon that I cooked off in order to start the soup. And just to add the perfect finish, chopped chives. Gives it a little spark. This is my idea of lobster corn chowder.
I just throw 2 pounds of ground beef into a large pot with 2 cloves of chopped garlic. Then cook it till it browns. While that's happening, I mix up the herbs and spices. 1 teaspoon of ground oregano, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 2 tablespoons of chili powder, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Then I add an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce, the spices, and give it a good stir. Put on the lid and simmer it for an hour. After that, I grab a 1/4 cup of masa mixed with 1/2 cup of water. Masa is corn flour, and it thickens the chili and adds a great corn flavor. After an hour, I dump the masa mixture into the chili, stir it together well, then let it simmer for a few more minutes. Then it's done. Simply perfect. Okay, I just snipped the bags open. Dinner doesn't get much easier than this, does it? And I'm just gonna place them in the pot and then just pour some water over the top. And then heat them up and the water will eventually evaporate and it'll be perfect. All right, the chili's thawed. I'll just throw the beans in. I'm using kidney beans and pinto beans, but you can use whatever beans you have in your pantry. And I'm just gonna let this simmer gently until they get back from moving cattle around. And then I've got some fixins ready for the chili. The great thing about these fixins is they're all pantry and fridge standbys. I've got tortilla chips, lime wedges, red onion, and of course, grated cheese. You gotta have lots and lots of grated cheese when you serve chili. All right, who wants chili? There you go, Alex Marie.
1 scoop, please.
1 scoop for Todd? Daddy, how many scoops?
I'll take 3 to start off with. Then I might have to eat Bryce's.
That does look good.
Gonna make this an outstanding baked potato soup. Oh yeah, bacon flavor in and chunks of bacon on top. This is all in my tribute to Louisville. Getting the lardones of bacon out. Applewood smoked bacon. Use the kind you like. I just like the thick bacon. Off to the side. Heat's coming up nice. This time I'm actually gonna use a measuring cup. Not because it's necessary, just because I hate getting the flour out of my bling. About a 1/2 cup of some flour into that bacon fat. Okay. Give this a little stir. We do want to make sure that we cook all that flour flavor out of there, okay? Looks like I've got a good look there. Okay, now in with some warm milk, nice and easy. See how that starts to foam up like that? Just want to get it nice and easy and not let that flour turn into dumplings. We're almost at the glory moment here. Taking this roasted potatoes, or these baked potatoes, not all the way baked yet. They're still a little firm, but that's fine because they're gonna cook out in this soup. Keeping the skins from going in, okay? There we go, get the rest of these in. Skins are off, nice and firm. Look at that, awesome. I think I'm gonna go with the white sharp cheddar into this. About a cup. Give this a stir. Also, salt, cracked black pepper, and yes, the bacon. The bacon shall go. I'm gonna put in about 2/3 of it and reserve the rest to be able to crumble up on top, along with some Parmesan cheese. So stir that in. Nice. All right. Give it a taste. Look at that. It's like a cross between fondue and baked potato at this point. We'll touch of some salt. I cooked the bacon, saved the bacon fat, the renderings in there, add a little flour to it, hit in some chicken stock, hit in some milk, then come back in with some potato that I cooked down, then back in with the bacon that was there. That all comes together. Now I get to top it off. Some of the bacon we used, a little cheddar cheese. We're gonna get fancy on this one, folks. We hit a little sour cream. Chives over the top. I'm It doesn't look like a baked potato in a bowl. But this is gonna be easy because it's already pureed together. You don't have to sit there and mix it inside the potato skin. Look at that.
It's homeschool co-op day for my oldest child, Alex, and her best friend, Meg. Every Friday, they go to Tulsa to a homeschool co-op, and my best friend, Hyacinth, takes them. Every single week, she takes them, stays with them all day, and brings them home. The last thing Hyacinth needs is to worry about cooking dinner every Friday night. So I'm gonna whip up some yummy beef stew with cheddar cheese grits for Hyacinth, and that way she won't have to think about dinner at all. I've got 2 pots going because I'm actually gonna make one for Hyacinth's family and one for mine. I'm gonna brown the meat first. I got a chuck roast and cut it into big cubes. I actually haven't told Hyacinth that I'm making dinner for her. I'm just gonna run in and pick up Alex like I always do and then spring dinner on her at the last minute. Okay, the meat's nice and brown, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it out of the pot. It's by no means cooked. It looks like it is, but in the stew, it's gonna simmer for a couple of hours, and this chuck roast gets so tender. I'm gonna add an onion to each pot. The pot is nice and brown. It has a lot of bits from the meat in there. And then I'm gonna add about 3 cloves of chopped garlic to each pot. All right, now I'll just stir the onions and garlic around a bit. The pots are so hot, they're almost translucent already, so I really just need to cook them for about a minute. So I'm just gonna take a break and grab a couple beers. It's been a long day. Just kidding. I'm gonna add the beer to the stew. This gives the stew really great flavor. So I'm just gonna add 32 ounces of beef stock to each pot. Now to the pots, I'm just gonna add a few dashes of Worcestershire. Worcestershire always adds a nice savoriness, a little bit of richness. Then I'm just gonna add a little bit of tomato paste to each pot. Gives it a little bit of a tang, gives the sauce a little bit of richness. So good. And I like to add paprika to the stew also. It gives it a great flavor, but it also kind of helps with the color. And then I'll add a little bit of sugar to each pot. Now the last thing I need to do in this stage is add the meat into the pot. So I'll just slide half into this one and half into this one. Okay, now I'll just stir the meat in, make sure it's all combined. And then all I need to do now is be patient. I'm gonna put the lids on the pot, turn the heat down, let the beef stew simmer for about an hour and a half, and then I'll put the root vegetables in, let it simmer until it's done. And Hyacinth is gonna be so happy. All right, the beef stew's been simmering away for about an hour and a half, and now it's time to add in the vegetables. I gotta tell you, oh, this smells so delicious. I smell everything, the beer, the broth. Now, I've got 2 carrots for each pot. And then I also have 2 parsnips for each pot. And then I have 1 turnip, and that's enough for both pots. So about a half a turnip per pot. Now, I didn't want to add these at the beginning because the vegetables would be pretty much disintegrated. So this is the perfect time to add them. Let them simmer for about 30 minutes till the veggies are nice and tender. The last thing I'm gonna do is thicken up the cooking liquid a little bit. I'll drizzle in some beef stock into 3 tablespoons of flour, and I just wanna make a really, really smooth, pretty thin paste. Now I'll just add a little bit into each pot, and then it's gonna keep bubbling just for about 10 minutes or so, and it's gonna make the stew just perfect and rich and thick.
I actually love clam chowder. But sometimes I find it too bland or sort of too finely diced. I like when it's like a stew. It's got filled with clams and vegetables. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna start with onions. Got a little bit of butter. So it's 8 tablespoons of butter. I think the base of any good soup is onions, just sauteed really slowly so that they get really caramelized and have lots of flavor. Okay, into the pot, that's about 2 cups of onions. And these are gonna saute for about 10 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm gonna get to work on the celery, carrots, and potatoes, all medium diced. perfectly cooked onions, nice and translucent. Okay, I'm gonna put the rest of the vegetables in. I have 2 cups of medium diced celery, 2 cups of medium diced carrots, and 4 cups of potatoes. I'm just gonna stir them around. I'm gonna saute them for about 10 minutes so they start to cook. It smells great. Okay, now some fresh thyme. About 1½ teaspoons of fresh thyme. You can use dried herbs, but fresh herbs are so much better. And if you have any left over, you can just strip them off the stems and just freeze them and use them another time. Okay. 1 teaspoon of salt. ½ a teaspoon of pepper. It's really important to season things as you go along. Just stir it up, and we'll let this cook for about 10 minutes until the vegetables start to get tender. Just can't make clam chowder without clams and fresh clam juice. Well, you could probably use bottled clam juice, but it just won't be the same. I'm gonna use 1/4 of fresh clam juice. Just pour it right into the vegetables. Just gonna bring that to a boil. Okay, so next thing I'm gonna do is make a roux, which is a little thickener. So it's 8 tablespoons of butter. Just gonna let that melt. ½ a cup of flour. And what it's gonna do is enrich and thicken the soup. Okay, the butter's melted. Just dump the flour in all at once, and then just whisk it. I'm gonna cook it for just about 2 or 3 minutes. Soup is actually great to make for parties because you always make it in advance, and the clam chowder actually tastes better after a day or 2. Okay. I'm just gonna take about 1 cup of the hot soup and just put it right into the roux. And then put it all back into the soup. And that just makes sure you don't get any lumps, ever. And then just stir it, and it'll thicken the soup right away. This looks great. Okay, it's time for the clams. So what I'm doing here is I'm just removing the sort of black part of the clam so I get the good meaty part into the soup. The rest is a little chewier. It's not so flavorful. This is about 1½ pounds of clams. Probably serves about 6 to 8 people. I add the clams at the end because you don't want them to get tough. You don't want them to overcook at all. Okay, now into the pot of clam chowder. And I'm just gonna cook them for about 2 minutes, just enough to heat them up. Just gonna stir them in. Messy job. So I need about 2 cups of milk. Oh, this looks great. Seriously delicious East Hampton clam chowder. Let me just check for seasoning, always a good idea. That's perfect. You can really taste the fresh clams. Makes a difference.